The story starts with our protagonist, Taro Sato, who is a 21-year-old student obsessed with black magic, tried to transport himself to another world using a magic circle he researched for years. However, he messed up the ritual. Instead of transporting his body, he accidentally killed himself and triggered a reincarnation process. He met a god who explained that because he technically committed suicide by mistake, he'd start his new life with a penalty. No cheat skills and no memories of his past life. Desperate, Taro begged for a special skill. The god gave him a mysterious, glitched-out skill but warned that he'd have to work hard to unlock its power. Taro was reborn as Toro, an 8-year-old orphan living in a harsh, medieval-style city. He was starving and beaten after trying to steal food. Just as he was about to die, his special skill kicked in, restoring his memories of his past life as Taro. Realizing he was in a sink or swim situation, he dragged his weak body to the local adventurers guild. At the guild, he met a veteran adventurer named Mauve and a kind receptionist named Ni. Mauve took a gamble on the kid and paid his registration fee. When Toro touched a magic orb to register, his skill appeared as gibberish or majabake, meaning nobody could read what it actually was. However, Toro proved he was special by showing he could read, write, and do math, skills most people in this world lacked. Toro started working small jobs like cleaning sewers to survive. During a bath provided by the guild master, Leo, Toro unlocked a rare purification magic because he met a secret requirement of his glitch skill. Leo, impressed by the kid's grit, gave him a room in the guild in exchange for help with chores and paperwork. As weeks passed, Toro became a vital part of the guild's office staff. He saved up enough to pay back Mauve and even started buying his own gear. He visited a dwarf blacksmith named Angus to buy a knife. Toro shared some basic metalworking knowledge from Earth, like tempering steel, which blew the dwarf's mind. This interaction triggered another part of his special skill, granting him true sight, an advanced version of appraisal that lets him see the real value and quality of item. Now equipped with basic magic, a room to sleep in, and a way to spot the best gear, Toro is finally moving from just surviving to actually building a life in this new world. It had been nearly 2 months since Toro became an adventurer. While the regulars at the guild were used to seeing the 8-year-old around, most just saw him as a helpful errand boy rather than a real warrior. The guild kept his rank at G+ to prevent him from taking dangerous jobs outside the city walls, believing he still lacked the physical strength for serious combat. One day, the guild's combat instructor, Daz, finally acknowledged him. After checking Toro's physical progress, Daz noted that the boy had finally put on enough muscle to start formal training. Toro was thrilled and added martial arts practice to his already busy schedule of cleaning, paperwork, and errands. To save time on chores, Toro experimented with his purification magic. He tried to clean his entire room at once and succeeded, discovering the walls were originally white under years of grime. Pushing his limits, he visualized the entire guild building and cast the spell again. The result was massive. The entire building, walls, ceilings, and roof, became sparkling clean instantly. Even the adventurers inside felt refreshed as the spell washed away their sweat and dirt. However, the stunt drained Toro's mana completely, causing him to collapse. The guild master, Leo, scolded him for wasting such high-level magic on cleaning, but secretly covered for him, telling the others it was a professional cleaning spell cast by a staff member. Toro used the time he saved from cleaning to focus on sword training. Since he was much younger and smaller than the other trainees, he spent his time repeating basic swings and forms to build muscle memory. He learned from the receptionist, Ni, that becoming an adventurer was actually quite expensive and difficult, making him realize how lucky he was to have Mauve and Leo looking out for him. Later, the blacksmith Angus called Toro to his shop. To thank him for the metalworking tips, Angus gifted him a custom-made short sword. Using his true sight, Toro realized the blade was worth a fortune, about 15 gold coins. It even had rare enchantment, agility +5 and sword mastery +2. Toro kept the discovery of the enchantments a secret, not wanting to explain his special eyes. Hold up. Smash like and subscribe for more hidden manga gems. Now, I dare you to comment, I'm loving it. I bet most of you won't do it. Alright, let's continue. 6 months passed since Toro regained his past life memory. He realized that while his modern knowledge was powerful, it was also dangerous. He heard a story about a clever beggar who was killed by nobles after trying to patent an idea. Deciding to stay low profile, he focused on boring but useful things like food. He used his purification magic to create pure yeast, allowing him to bake soft white bread, a luxury in a world of rock-hard rye. He shared it with Ni and Leo, who were blown away. Soon, the guild's tavern started selling sandwiches made with his bread, which became a massive hit in the city. Toro didn't stop there. He discovered that people in this world treated rice as animal feed. Determined to eat his favorite food again, he introduced rice bowls topped with diced meat and sauce. It was cheap, filling, and delicious. While eating his new creation, his special skill triggered again, granting him plant knowledge because he had acted as a missionary of food. This upgraded his true sight, allowing him to identify any plant on sight. With this new power, he was promoted to rank F, finally allowing him to take on monster hunting quests. For his first F-rank mission, Toro chose herb gathering. Using his plant identification, he found rare herbs in record time. However, deep in the forest, he encountered his first monster, a goblin. Instead of fighting, Toro used his agility plus 5 boots to run away at incredible speed. He realized that surviving was more important than being a hero. Back at the guild, his massive haul of herbs shocked everyone, and his report of the goblin helped the guild stay alert. Toro continued his grind, training in archery, alchemy, and smithing while gathering herbs. He turned 10 years old, marking 2 years since his memories returned. One day, while avoiding goblins again, his skill triggered once more, granting him presence detection and presence stealth because he had become a master of running away from goblins. These skills allowed him to sense enemies through walls and hide his own presence perfectly. Soon after, a crisis hit. A D-rank team called 5 Arrows was ambushed by a pack of 80 goblins. Toro used his speed and detection skills to act as a scout and messenger, leading a rescue team led by Leo and Mauve to the site. Thanks to Toro's quick reporting and the healing potions he had made himself, the team was saved without any death. Though he didn't fight directly, the veteran adventurers praised him for his vital role in the rescue. A few days later, a rumor spread that Nee was leaving for an arranged marriage. The male adventurers went into a panic, and a guild staff member named Marco tricked Toro into spying on her. It turned out to be a misunderstanding. Nee's parents were just visiting, but the adventurers involved were caught and punished with punishment quests. Toro joined them out of curiosity and went to a quarry to help mine stone. While there, he used his true sight to find a massive chunk of mithril, a legendary rare metal in a pile of junk rocks. This feat granted him the precision skill. The mithril sold for a staggering 105 gold coins. Not wanting to be targeted for his wealth, Toro decided to spend all the money on a massive party for the entire guild and donated the rest to the local orphanage. This made him a local legend, and soon, street performers were putting on puppet shows about his heroic deeds. Worried that the fame would make him a target for kidnappers or greedy nobles, Toro decided he needed to create a new distraction to shift the public's attention away from him. Toro arrived at the mansion of Duke Valiera, the kingdom's prime minister. He was shocked to find himself in the presence of the highest-ranking noble below the king. As he entered the room, his special skill triggered, granting him absolute stealth appraisal because more than 10 people were trying to appraise him at once. He immediately activated it to hide his stats and value from the curious noble. The prime minister challenged Toro to a 3-match demonstration. The merchants, Paulo and Garpish, were terrified that if Toro won too decisively, he'd offend the Duke, but if he lost badly, the guild's reputation would suffer. Toro played strategically. In Reversi, a common beginner mistake is taking too many pieces early on. The Duke fell for this, dominating the board at first while the watching nobles cheered. However, Toro used advanced tactics to flip the entire board in the final turns, winning the first 2 games. By the 3rd game, the room was tense. The Duke was playing seriously now. Toro managed to manipulate the moves so perfectly that the final score was a 32-32 draw. The nobles after the match, the Duke hosted a casual session where other nobles started playing. Toro walked around giving basic advice, feeling that as long as everyone was having fun, his job was done. He eventually regrouped with the merchants, Garpish and Paulo. Garpish was bursting with excitement, praising Toro for his incredible control, handing the Duke an early lead only to flip the game at the end and secure a respectful draw. Toro just gave a tired smile, glad he managed to protect the guild's reputation without offending the high-ranking noble. The Duke approached Toro, apologizing for testing him earlier. He admitted he had become a bit arrogant about his skills because the game seemed simple, but Toro's mastery humbled him. He wasn't angry at all. In fact, he seemed genuinely impressed. However, his tone shifted as he revealed the real reason he had summoned Toro. He wanted to personally judge the boy's character on behalf of someone else. The Duke revealed he possessed an S-rank appraisal skill and was shocked that it didn't work on Toro. He noticed Toro's stats appeared for a split second before vanishing and being replaced by average numbers. Realizing he had been caught, Toro felt a cold sweat. The Duke asked Toro to lower his guard so he could see his true value before recommending him to a certain important person. Toro agreed, but only allowed the Duke to see. The Duke was fascinated. He noted that while Toro's physical stats were low like a normal child's, His dexterity was off the charts due to his precision skill. He also found true sight intriguing, noting how it linked with his presence detection. What puzzled the Duke most was that despite Toro's gibberish skill, he had high proficiency levels in multiple unrelated jobs like blacksmithing, woodworking, and alchemy. Usually high proficiency increases base stats, but for Toro, it didn't. The Duke eventually gave up trying to figure out the logic behind Toro's growth, but concluded that the boy was a hardworking genius with no hidden evil intentions. The Duke then dropped a bombshell. Toro was to become the personal instructor for the kingdom's fifth prince. The prince had insisted on it. Toro was panicked. He wanted to stay low profile and now he was being dragged into the inner circle of royalty. The Duke ignored his internal crisis, promising him great pay, and sent him back to his inn in a fancy carriage. The next day, Toro took a break and went exploring the capital with his guard, Manga. They visited a high-end magic item shop where the staff looked down on them for being dirty kids. Toro spotted a massive magic storage backpack priced at 100 million yen, 10 platinum coins. Using true sight, he realized it was actually worth a bit less, but he was mostly just excited to see a legendary fantasy item. Manga, unfazed by the price, asked to see smaller versions, and they spent the day browsing luxury items they didn't intend to buy, just to annoy the rude staff. On the day of his royal appointment, a white carriage with the royal crest picked Toro up. He hated the attention, especially when knights and maids started bowing to him. He met Prince Flu, who was a chubby boy with elven ears. The prince tried to act superior because he was 3 years older, but Toro didn't hold back. He crushed the prince in reverse repeatedly. Instead of getting mad, the prince was impressed. He admitted that everyone usually let him win, but he wanted to actually get good enough to beat the Duke. The two bonded over their shared goal of taking down the ruthless Duke at the game. Over the next month, Toro became a regular at the palace. He learned that Prince Flu was a half-elf who felt like an outsider in the human kingdom. He didn't want the throne. He just wanted to be good at something so people would respect him. Toro worked hard to train him, and their friendship triggered Toro's hidden skill again. He unlocked elemental magic, covering all basic elements for befriending a high-elf bloodline, and the majesty skill for becoming friends with royalty. The magic turned out to be utility level, good for lighting fires or drying clothes, but not for war. After the contract ended, Toro received a massive reward, 20 platinum coins. He was now incredibly rich. He used the money to go back to the magic shop and buy the 10 platinum coin storage backpack just to spite the clerk. Immediately after paying, his skill triggered again, granting him infinite magic storage. The expensive backpack was now useless since he had the power naturally, but he and Manga just laughed it off. Before leaving for his home city, Seishi, Toro set up a business deal to have luxury reverse sets produced in the capital under a fake brand name, Gyro Sugar. He then returned home, where he was welcomed back by his friend Ni at the guild. Toro didn't stay idle. He used his new wealth to buy an old tavern and turn it into a specialty restaurant. He introduced curry to the world, which became an instant hit despite the high cost of spices. He also started taking on E-rank monster quests. Initially, he struggled against groups of goblins, but he discovered that his majesty skill could freeze monsters in fear, allowing him to take them down easily. Eventually, a kingdom-wide quest was issued to hunt down a group of bandits terrorizing the roads. Toro joined a 3-man scouting team with a veteran named Qzort and a smooth talker named Cheek. During a heavy rainstorm on their scouting mission, they sought shelter at a suspicious, isolated village. When the village gatekeeper refused to let them in, a man walked out of a nearby house to argue. Toro recognized the voice immediately. It was Sok, the man who had beaten and nearly killed him when he first arrived in this world as a starving orphan. After arriving at the rain-soaked bandit village, Toro spotted Sok, the man who had nearly killed him years ago. Toro quickly whispered to his teammate Qzort that he had found his father. Qzort and their other teammate Cheek immediately understood the tension. To avoid suspicion from the village gatekeeper, Cheek cleverly haggled over a small fee to rest under their roof and then led the group away as if they were just giving up on hunting for the day. Once they were clear, the team sped up. Qzort's detection skills revealed that villagers were already gathering at the entrance. Sok had likely reported them. They ran through the night, avoiding main roads and rest areas where bandit scouts might be waiting, and headed straight back to the city of Seishi. The Adventurers Guild acted fast. Since the village sat on the border of several noble territories, a joint operation was organized. While Toro was deemed too young for the high-risk scouting phase, he insisted on joining the final raid. He felt he had to see his father's fate with his own eyes. A week later, 80 adventurers divided into 3 units launched a pre-dawn attack. Toro's job was to use his stealth and archery to take out the sentries in the watchtowers. As he fired his first lethal shot, he felt his hands shake. Killing a human felt much heavier than hunting monsters. However, the unit leader, Roy, gave him a reassuring pat on the back and Toro pushed forward. During the siege, Toro used his magic storage skill in a creative way. He stored sections of the wooden defensive walls into his infinite space, literally making parts of the fortress vanish so his allies could rush in. The fort was taken quickly, and the hostages were rescued. Meanwhile, in the village, the main bandit force put up a tough fight. A high-ranking adventurer named Mana and the Five Arrows team led the charge, using fire magic to break the bandits' morale. As the bandit leader tried to flee toward the fort, Toro used his earth magic to pelt him with stones, and then used dark magic to blind him with a magical mist. This allowed Mana to knock the leader unconscious. The mission was a total success. Out of 87 bandits, most were captured or killed. 13 escaped, including Toro's father, Sok. However, with a kingdom-wide bounty now on his head, Sok was a hunted man with nowhere to go. For his contributions, Toro was promoted to rank E. Life returned to normal for a while. Toro opened his specialized curry restaurant, which became a massive hit. He also introduced desserts like pudding and manju sweet bean bun. While the manju didn't sell well at first, they became a popular energy snack for adventurers on long quests. However, Toro's fame brought new trouble. The local ruler, Viscount Seishi, wanted to hire Toro as a servant or a playmate for his children just to brag about having a famous adventurer on his staff. Toro politely refused, but the Viscount took it as a personal insult. The petty noble sent soldiers to the guild to arrest Toro on a fake charge, being an accomplice to his bandit father. To protect the guild from a violent clash with the army, Toro surrendered. He spent the next 3 months in a miserable dungeon. The guards tortured and beat him daily, trying to force a confession. Toro only survived because the extreme pain triggered his special skill, granting him abnormal status resistance and pain resistance. Back in the capital, Toro's old friends, the merchant Garpish and Duke Valiera, found out about his arrest. The Duke was furious that a petty viscount was mistreating the boy who had tutored the prince. He rallied the king, the queen, and other nobles who loved the game Toro had introduced. Under pressure from the king himself, the viscount was forced to release Toro. Toro emerged from prison skinny, scarred, and weak. His friend Nee cried when she saw his condition. Although he used potions to heal his physical wounds, the mental exhaustion remained. During his recovery, he turned 11 and unlocked a new skill, Ultra Regeneration. Realizing that his name, Toro Sato, was now too famous and attracted too much political trouble, he decided to drop his last name. He re-registered at the guild as just Toro. To prepare for a fresh start, he sold the rights to his curry recipe to the guild master Leo for a large sum of money. Toro decided to leave Seishi to find a quiet place where no one knew him. He told his friends he was going to the capital to thank his supporters, but secretly, he planned to find a new home. After a tearful goodbye to Nee and Leo, he traveled to a remote, rundown place called Dance's Village. The village was small and suspicious of outsiders. Toro registered at the local guild, a crumbling building with a cold, unenthusiastic receptionist named Chloe. He took a room at a local inn where the door didn't even lock and the food was terrible. His first quest was simply repairing the guild building. Using his advanced carpentry and precision skills, he fixed the entire place in a single day, shocking Chloe and earning an immediate promotion back to rank F. Toro settled into his tiny room, hoping this quiet village would finally be the peaceful home he was looking for. Toro headed into the forest for a routine herb-gathering quest. Using his upgraded True Sight linked with plant knowledge, he easily located the required herbs while his presence detection kept him alert to nearby movement. Suddenly, he sensed several figures. One human being chased by 4 goblins. Hiding his presence, Toro rushed to the scene and found Bob, a beastman adventurer he had met in the village, exhausted and struggling to stay conscious. Toro acted quickly, taking down 2 goblins with his bow and using his majesty skill to freeze the remaining 2 in their tracks before finishing them off. Bob collapsed, having been wounded by a poisoned blade. Toro immediately applied a potion to the wound and forced an antidote down Bob's throat. To be safe, he cast his status recovery magic, a spell he had never used on another person before. Bob's breathing stabilized, and Toro carried the grown man back to Dance's village on his back. Back at the village, the locals were unimpressed. Still suspicious of outsiders, they mocked the situation, calling it a staged act between 2 strangers. Toro ignored the cold comments and took Bob to a doctor, who confirmed Bob would recover thanks to the quick first aid. Once Bob woke up at the inn, he thanked Toro and explained why he had been in the forest. He had been investigating the area around a local shrine. Bob, a member of the dogkin race with a sharp sense of smell and intuition, felt that something fishy was coming from the shrine, a strange, heavy feeling that matched the dark atmosphere hanging over the entire village. Bob believed the village used to be a kind place and stayed because he wanted to find the cause of its sudden change. Inspired by Bob's dedication, Toro decided to help him save the village. The next day, Bob went back to hunt monsters near the shrine. Toro followed him under the excuse of gathering herbs, using his stealth skills to track Bob's progress. Deep in the forest, Toro discovered an overgrown path leading to a clearing where 10 goblins were gathered, led by a rare and intelligent goblin sorcerer wearing a hooded robe. Toro, who could now see spirits, noticed a thick dark cloud of dark spirits surrounding the shrine. As he watched, Bob arrived from the other side of the clearing and immediately engaged the goblin. Realizing Bob was outnumbered, Toro fired an arrow at the sorcerer, but it was deflected by a goblin knight, another rare armored variant that had emerged from the shrine. Toro shouted for Bob to retreat. To cover their escape, Toro drew the monster's attention with his bow and earth magic before vanishing back into the shadows using present stealth. Safely back in the village, Bob thanked Toro for the save, admitting he had been too slow to realize he was in over his head. They reported the presence of the goblin sorcerer and knight to Chloe at the guild. She was distressed, explaining that the dance's branch was in shambles. The previous guild master had quit months ago after getting fed up with the villagers' hostility, leaving Chloe to manage everything alone. No other adventurers wanted to come to such a rude village, so the task of clearing the shrine fell solely on Bob and Toro. Toro suggested a strategy. Instead of a direct assault, they would pick off the goblins one by one. Over the following days, they lured individual goblins away from the shrine and killed them, retreating whenever the sorcerer or knight tried to lead a counterattack. Eventually, only the two rare monsters remained. Toro spent 2 days straight monitoring the shrine. When the goblin knight finally left the shrine alone to hunt for food, Toro signaled Bob. They ambushed the knight, but Toro's arrows bounced off its armor and Bob's sword was blocked by its shield. Toro used dark magic to create a mist, blinding the monster and allowing Bob to land a hit, but the knight retaliated, slashing Bob across the chest. As Bob fell, the goblin sorcerer suddenly appeared to join the fight. Toro, realizing he couldn't win a test of strength, let the knight stab him in the stomach. The monster thought it had won, but Toro used that split second to drive his short sword through the knight's throat, killing it. The sorcerer watched in horror as Toro's ultra-regeneration instantly closed his fatal stomach wound. While the sorcerer was distracted by this monster-like healing, Toro healed Bob with potions and used earth magic to pelt the sorcerer with stone. Just as the sorcerer prepared a final fire spell, Bob, who had been revived by Toro's potions, stepped up behind the monster and decapitated it. With the threat gone, Toro sent Bob back to the village with the monster parts to report the success while he investigated the shrine. Inside, the air was thick with the stench of dead animals and dark spirits. At the center of the shrine sat a stone altar with a round rock covered in a heavy curse. Toro used his purification magic on the altar. He realized that the curse was a layer of dark energy that was trapping the spirits. He spent hours repeatedly casting purification until he ran out of mana. On the second day of cleaning the stone, he finally broke through the glass-like barrier of the curse. Suddenly, the dark spirits were sucked into the stone, and a manifestation of the dark spirit, Pluto, appeared. Pluto thanked Toro for freeing him from the curse placed by the goblin sorcerer, which had been leaking negative energy into the village and poisoning the residents' minds. As a reward, Pluto granted Toro the protection of the dark spirit weak, which boosted his dark magic and gave him high resistance to mental attacks and status effects. As the curse lifted, the atmosphere in Dance's village changed almost instantly. The villagers' hostility vanished, replaced by their original kind and cheerful personality. They were horrified by how they had acted and felt deep gratitude toward Bob and Toro. Bob traveled to nearby towns to clear the village's bad reputation, using the sorcerer's magic stone as proof of their deed. Meanwhile, Toro helped the village rebuild. He taught the local blacksmith better forging techniques, helped the woodworkers with house repairs, and taught the innkeeper how to make tonkatsu, breaded pork cutlets. The new food and improved crafts quickly attracted traveling merchants and new adventurers. Toro made sure Bob got all the credit for saving the village, wanting to stay out of the spotlight himself. The village chief was so grateful that he offered Bob a house for a tiny, symbolic rent. Toro even teased Bob into inviting his girlfriend to move to the village with him. After months of hardship, Toro had finally helped turn the rundown village into a thriving, peaceful home. Toro helped Bob write a letter to his girlfriend, Momo, inviting her to live with him in the village. Since Bob struggled with writing, Toro handled the pen and even paid extra for a special courier to deliver the message immediately. Soon after, Chloe asked Toro to mentor a new adventurer named Shin. Although Shin was 7 years older and ranked F, he was humble and eager to learn. Toro taught him the basics of herb gathering, emphasizing the importance of not pulling roots so plants could grow back. Shin was amazed by Toro's maturity and his ability to stay alert for monsters. Toro warned him that at their rank, running away from enemies like goblins was the smartest move, as one mistake could mean death. To help Shin financially, Toro showed him how to find rare, high-value herbs, earning the older man's deep gratitude. Another newcomer, a 19-year-old named Lumia, also joined the guild. Unlike Shin, Lumia was arrogant because of his physical strength and focused only on hunting monsters, looking down on Toro and Shin for gathering herbs. Despite this, Toro noticed that Shin had a sword skill but no proper training or weapon, so Toro bought him a sword and began teaching him martial arts basics. One day, while out in the forest, Toro sensed a fight. Using his true sight, he saw 5 goblins surrounding a human. It was Lumia, who had been stabbed in the back and beaten. Toro rushed in, instantly killing one goblin and using his majesty skill to freeze the others before finishing them off. He found Lumia unconscious with broken bones and multiple wounds. Toro decided to test a mid-grade potion he had been working on. The potion worked wonders, healing the deep stab wounds and bruises instantly, though the broken arm still needed a doctor. When Lumia woke up at the clinic, the doctor told him he would have died if not for Toro and Shin. Realizing that the 2 people he looked down on had saved his life with an expensive potion, Lumia's arrogance vanished. From then on, Shin and Lumia became Toro's shadows. The village grew used to the strange sight of 2 grown men following an 11-year-old boy. Toro began coaching them on their skills. He advised Lumia to combine his strength with a shield for a powerful defensive-offensive style, and told Shin to mix swordsmanship with martial arts to become a versatile fighter. One evening, a carriage arrived in the village. A catkin woman named Momo stepped out looking for Bob. Toro recognized her as Bob's girlfriend and offered to lead her to his house. When she realized Toro was the one who wrote the letter, they hit it off immediately. The reunion between Bob and Momo was emotional, and soon the whole village was celebrating. The village chief hosted a banquet to honor Bob as a hero. Bob tried to credit Toro, but the loud, drunken villagers kept cutting him off. Toro was happy to stay in the background, knowing that being a child hero would only bring unwanted attention from nobles. Business at the guild picked up, and a new quest appeared: a massive outbreak of killer ants in a neighboring village. Toro, Shin, and Lumia signed up. They were joined by Bob, who was now a D-rank leader. Before leaving, Toro had Shin and Lumia gather specific herbs that acted as a natural poison for insects but were harmless to humans. When he accidentally used his magic storage to pull out tools, the 2 men were shocked, but they promised to keep his secret. Toro used a small wind spirit to dry and grind the herbs into a fine powder. Before they left, he fed the group homemade hamburgers and sweet buns from his storage, which moved Shin and Lumia to tears. At the infested village, the group saw a swarm of giant ants destroying crops. Toro's plan was simple. The team threw the herbal powder into the air, and Bob used wind magic to blow it into the swarm. The ants died instantly. In the village, the team repeated the tactic, saving the residents from certain death. Toro even tracked down and killed the ant queen hiding on the outskirts. The village and the local knight were so grateful they threw a massive party. Bob, once again, was treated like a legendary savior. Back at the Dances Guild, Chloe was overwhelmed by the massive haul of monster parts. She officially promoted Bob to D-rank and moved Toro, Shin, and Lumia up to F-rank. Chloe also revealed she had been appointed as the official branch manager. With new staff arriving, including a vice manager named Shiri, the guild was finally becoming professional. Toro then spearheaded a new project, turning an old abandoned building into a guild-run tavern and called the Rest Stop. He acted as the lead architect and carpenter, using his advanced woodworking skills to build a 2-story structure that amazed everyone. To keep the tavern profitable, Toro decided to introduce new foods. He negotiated the rights to use the hamburger recipe from his old guild and began the long, difficult process of making miso from scratch. Using magic to speed up the fermentation and culturing of rice, he knew that once the tavern opened with these unique dishes, Dance's village would truly become a bustling hub for adventurers. Toro successfully created miso by using his dark spirit magic decay to speed up the fermentation process that usually takes a year. When he first showed the brown, fermented paste to Shin and Lumia, they were terrified, thinking he had lost his mind and was trying to feed them rotten food. However, after Toro and the guild cook prepared a feast of miso soup, miso grilled meat, and rice balls, the 2 were blown away by the deep, savory flavor. The cook was so impressed that he shook Toro's hand, realizing this would be the star attraction of their new tavern, the Rest Stop. Toro set up a production area in the basement, teaching the staff how to make it so the village would have a steady supply in the future. The tavern's success, however, made the owner of the local inn jealous. She feared the new guild-run building would steal all her customers. Toro handled the situation maturely, suggesting they renovate her rundown inn instead of competing. He led the project, adding a 2nd floor and thickening the walls to block out noise, a change Toro especially appreciated since he lived there. The inn was renamed the Little Person's Inn and became more popular than ever, catering to budget travelers while the tavern handled the higher-end guests. Amidst the village's growth, the traveling merchant Marches decided to open a permanent shop. He was lured into a trap by a large merchant group called the Damaski Company, who tricked him into a contract he couldn't afford, hoping to bankrupt him and steal his business ties. Toro stepped in secretly, providing Marches with the necessary gold to fulfill his contract. He then took Marches to the capital to meet his own high-level contacts at the Garpish Company. Using his reputation as a master craftsman's apprentice, Toro secured a massive distribution deal for Marches, effectively cutting out the crooked Damaski Company. When the Damaski representative showed up in the village to gloat over March's ruined life, he was met by Toro, Marches, and the high-ranking officials of the Merchant Guild. The villain fled in disgrace, and his company was slapped with heavy penalties for fraud. As the village continued to thrive, a new adventurer arrived, a 14-year-old girl named Eris. She was a triple-class prodigy with skills in healing, magic, and barriers. Arrogant and convinced she was the youngest adventurer around, she was shocked to find that 11-year-old Toro was already a higher rank than her. She tried to compete with him, but during a joint quest to hunt goblins, she realized Toro's tactical mind and preparation were far beyond hers. Despite her initial attitude, she was so impressed by Toro, Shin, and Lumaya's teamwork that she quit her previous team in the capital to join them. After a bit of a messy start where Eris cried because she thought she had been rejected, Toro agreed to form a temporary team for as long as they were in Dance's village. He restructured their role. Lumaya acted as the tank to draw enemy attention, Shin was the primary attacker, Eris provided long-range magic and healing, and Toro acted as the support/scout, filling in any gaps with his bow, potions, and stealth. Eris's powerful elemental magic gave the team the firepower they were previously lacking. As they trained together, Toro realized that while he might not have the flashy stats of his teammates, his ability to manage the battlefield made them an unstoppable force. Toro's team, now known as Black Gold Wings, officially reached E rank. To celebrate, Toro gifted the group custom gear. He used his crafting skills to embroider their new logo Black Wings with gold trim onto their armor. He even made a special magic staff for Eris using a rare ebony branch and a Goblin Knight's magic stone. The staff wasn't just for magic. Toro designed it to generate a light blade for close combat defense, which touched Eris deeply. The celebration was cut short when a crisis hit the guild. A D-rank team, which included their friend Bob, had gone missing while investigating orcs near a mountain village. A red distress signal had been spotted, signaling a life-or-death emergency. Toro's team immediately volunteered for the rescue mission, joining higher-ranked B, C, and D-rank teams. Upon reaching the mountain, Toro used his true eye and presence detection to navigate the forest. He realized the orc population was unusually high. While the higher-ranked teams focused on the main paths, Toro's group found the missing adventurers trapped on a high ledge, surrounded by over 20 orcs. Toro signaled the other teams with a red flare and coordinated a massive pincer attack. During the battle, Toro's team held their own. While the B-rank veterans did the heavy lifting, Toro's group protected Eris as she rained down lightning magic. Toro secretly used dark magic to weaken the orcs, making the fight easier for everyone. They successfully eliminated the threat and rescued the missing team. Bob was safe, but one of his teammates was badly injured. Toro didn't hesitate to use a high-grade potion to save the man's life, surprising the veteran healers with his generosity and resources. After the rescue, Bob revealed a strange discovery. They had found a cave where the orcs seemed to be appearing out of thin air. When the group investigated, they found a structure that looked brand new, with paved floors and glowing walls. Eris realized this was a dungeon core, a rare phenomenon where a dungeon begins to grow and spawn monsters. As they watched, a new orc began to form right out of the ground. Realizing that leaving the core active would mean an endless supply of monsters threatening the nearby village, the teams reached a quick consensus. Despite the scientific value of a new dungeon, they decided to destroy the core to ensure the safety of the people. Bob swung his sword with all his might, but the dungeon core was so hard that his blade snapped in half. Toro stepped in, using his small sword like a chisel and hitting it with a hammer from his magic storage. With a final strike, the core shattered like glass. Suddenly, a mysterious voice of the world echoed in Toro's head, announcing that he had met the condition for a secret skill by destroying the core. He was granted Creation Magic Weak. As the core died, the glowing walls and floors turned into dull, lifeless stone. The dungeon didn't collapse, but it was officially dead. Before leaving, Toro noticed a hidden spot where the ground was bulging. He and Bob dug it up and found a treasure chest. Inside was a plain-looking bow. Using his true eye, Toro identified it as the Artemis bow, though its stats and value remained hidden. Bob told Toro to keep it since he didn't use bows. Toro packed everything, the bow, the chest, and even the broken pieces of the core, into his magic storage. Outside, they reunited with the rest of the rescue team. Eris, Shin, and Rumaya were relieved to see them safe. With the mission a success, the group headed back to Dance's village. Bob returned home to his wife, Momo, who had stayed up waiting for him. After a tearful reunion, the clean freak catgirl Momo jokingly told Bob he smelled terrible and needed a bath immediately. The next morning at the guild, the team received their reward for the orcs, but they didn't rank up yet. Guild rules prevent dangerous, overranked kills from counting toward promotion to keep rookies from taking suicidal risks. While Eris was annoyed, Shin and Rumaya were thrilled with the extra pay. They revealed they both had girlfriends back home and planned to rent a house so they could bring them to the village. Toro felt a bit left behind, realizing the age gap between him and his older teammates. Toro decided to test his new creation magic. Eris followed him out of curiosity. After some trial and error, Toro realized he couldn't create things out of thin air. He needed raw material. He pulled out some wood focused and transformed it into a perfectly smooth wooden chair. Eris was shocked, comparing it to legendary alchemy. However, the magic had limits. It drained a huge amount of mana, couldn't make massive objects, and required materials. To practice, Toro used a silver coin, a gold coin, and a fragment of the dungeon core to create a beautiful wing-themed pendant for Eris. She loved it, especially since it matched their team logo. Toro then spent his energy making gear for the rest of the team. He gathered iron, ore, and sand, using his magic to bypass complex blacksmithing techniques. For Bob, he created a katana, a single-edged blade from his old world. He used a magic stone from a goblin sorcerer and core fragments to imbue it with fire properties. The process nearly killed Toro from mana exhaustion, but he successfully created a magic sword. When he gave the katana to Bob, the veteran was stunned by its quality. Later, while hunting orcs, Bob accidentally chipped the blade on a rock. He went to find Toro to ask for a repair, but when he pulled the sword out, the chip was gone. Toro realized the sword had a self-repair ability. He warned Bob to keep the sword's origin a secret, as something that powerful would cause a riot if people knew an 11-year-old made it. A few days later, Shin and Rumaya moved into their new house, but they returned looking miserable. Both of their girlfriends had left them for other men while they were away. Eris, being blunt, told them it was their own fault for not keeping in touch. To help them out, Toro and Eris agreed to move into the extra house Rumaya had originally planned to rent. Toro immediately started renovating their new home. He used his magic and crafting skills to build an indoor toilet with a purification system and a bathhouse with a magic-powered water heater. He even created a stainless steel hand pump for the well. Eris was amazed by these modern luxuries, though she worried about Toro constantly draining his mana to build them. After a week of living together, the team returned to the guild to report a quest. There, they ran into a group of arrogant rookies called Obsidian Sword. These four were noble-born and had high-tier skills like Knight and Mage, but they were incredibly rude and lacked basic common sense. They tried to bully the guild receptionist and looked down on Toro, calling him a mere bag carrier. Eris stood up for Toro, revealing he was actually the leader of their team. The nobles laughed, refusing to believe a kid could lead an E-rank group. They tried to provoke a fight, but Toro stayed calm. He pointed out that violence is banned in the guild. When the nobles challenged them to step outside, Toro simply told them to leave. Once they went outside to wait for a fight, Toro and his team quietly slipped out the back door to go on their next quest, leaving the arrogant nobles waiting in the street like fools. While taking down goblins on their quest, Eris complained that they should have just beaten up the arrogant, Obsidian Sword nobles earlier. Toro calmly pointed out that they were currently doing their job, sniping goblins through trees with his Artemis bow. He explained that since everyone at the guild saw the nobles' behavior, the black gold wings didn't need to lower themselves to their level. He noted that while those nobles had high-tier skills, they lacked the brains and effort to use them properly. Shin and Rumaya laughed, feeling proud when Toro told them that their hard work made them just as capable as any elite. When they returned to the guild, the Obsidian Sword leader Nasirus was waiting. He ignored his earlier embarrassment and tried to scout Eris, claiming her noble blood meant she belonged with elites like them. Eris shut him down instantly, telling him that in the world of adventurers, only results matter. She revealed that while his team was bragging about one kill, her team had taken out 25 goblins that day. Nasirus laughed it off as a lie until Toro pulled out a bag filled with 25 pairs of goblin ears. Silenced by the proof, the nobles' pride was crushed. Despite the humiliation, Obsidian Sword stayed in the village. They tried to bribe the branch manager, Chloe, into ranking them up, but she threatened to expose them if they didn't leave her office. Driven by spite, they vowed to prove themselves and stayed at the rest stop inn. However, their team began to crumble when their mage quit, calling low-rank herb-gathering quests boring. Nasirus gave a dramatic speech to his remaining two members about overcoming trials to become heroes. Toro's team, watching from a nearby table, found the whole scene pathetic but chose to ignore it. That night, Eris visited Toro's room and confessed that she actually came from a noble family. Toro wasn't surprised, having guessed it from her knowledge of government-run dungeons. She explained that she ran away after her father disappeared in a dungeon, and her mother tried to force her to marry a terrible man. Toro comforted her, promising that her background changed nothing, she was still their teammate. Toro set up 2 more tents, lining the floors with soft furs. He gave one to the carriage driver and the ladies, while he shared the larger one with Shin and Rumaya. To brighten the camp, Toro brought out a custom magic lantern that ran on low-grade mana stones. Unlike smelly oil lamps, it was clean, cheap, and incredibly bright. The merchant leader was so impressed by the potential of this magic lantern that he immediately begged Toro for a contract to sell them to normal household. For dinner, Toro pulled fresh vegetable soup, grilled miso rice balls, and pudding for dessert out of his magic storage. The driver and leader were stunned by the luxury. When Toro jokingly told the leader he'd be charging these as expenses, the man nearly choked on his soup and quickly told Toro to take it up with Marchit. At night, Eris used her barrier master skill to create a safe zone around the tents. Monsters couldn't get in, and she would instantly know if anything approached. Even the veterans were impressed by her specialized support magic. The next morning, they packed up instantly. Toro and his team hurried to the slums to find the kidnapped children. Using his presence detection, Toro avoided suspicious back alleys and reached the entrance without trouble. While keeping watch, they spotted a criminal named Luhai rushing into the area with 2 armed men. Toro decided to follow them while Shin trailed at a distance to avoid detection. They tracked Luhai to a large, decaying merchant house in the commercial district. Toro sneaked up to the wall and overheard the kidnappers panicking because the guards were closing in. They planned to load the children onto a ship that very night to sell them off. Having confirmed the location, Toro reunited with his team and met a C-rank group called Nanny Wars, who were already hunting Luhai for his bounty. The combined teams localized the kidnappers in a large building where a carriage was waiting. Toro used his skills to count 16 people inside, half of them children. They decided on a swift ambush. As the Nanny Wars charged through the front, Toro's team moved to the back. Suddenly, Luhai burst out of the rear door. In the chaos, Luhai slashed Rumaya's arm and kicked Shin aside. Toro tried to engage him, but Luhai was far more skilled, mocking Toro's E-rank status before vanishing into the alleys. While the Nanny Wars successfully rescued the children and captured the henchmen, 2 criminals escaped, Luhai and a man named Sok Sato. When Toro heard the second name, he was shocked. It was his biological father. Sok had a special escape skill that allowed him to erase his tracks and scent perfectly, which explained how he had evaded the law for so long. Toro kept his identity a secret, but felt a cold sweat realizing his past was crossing his path again. The merchant behind the kidnapping was arrested, but Toro wasn't finished with Luhai. Predicting the criminal would flee by sea, the team staked out the harbor at midnight. They spotted Luhai rowing a small boat toward a foreign ship. Just as Luhai began to gloat about escaping their jurisdiction, Toro used his new Great Archer ability. He fired a light-infused arrow across the dark, wavy water, piercing Luhai's chest with perfect accuracy. As Luhai died, a voice of the world echoed in Toro's head, granting him the Divine Archer title and unlocking the full potential of his bow. The next day, the team was praised by the guards, though Shin and Rumaya felt humbled by how easily Luhai had overpowered them in close combat. Eris reminded them that they needed to keep training to face stronger enemies. On the journey back, Toro tested his new stats. The Divine Archer title significantly boosted his strength, speed, and vision. He could now see as far as an arrow could fly and move with incredible agility. To celebrate, he playfully dashed around, though Eris looked at him like he was crazy. When they reached the mountain village, they were greeted by Bandy and the villagers. The village was struggling because timber prices had dropped, and the forest animals had disappeared. Toro realized the villagers were starving and introduced them to Jagamo potatoes, explaining that while the sprouts were poisonous, the rest was safe and filling. He also gave them seeds for tomatoes and corn suited for high altitudes. Toro then came up with a plan to create a village specialty, mayonnaise. Using the village's eggs, vinegar, and oil, he showed them how to make the condiment. He cooked a feast of steamed potatoes, fries, and wild vegetable tempura to prove the food was delicious. The villagers, initially skeptical, were blown away by the taste. However, the mystery of the missing forest animals remained. A village child mentioned seeing a giant bird in the sky. Using his enhanced vision, Toro spotted the silhouette of a creature with 4 legs and wings, a griffin. He realized this B-rank monster had claimed the forest as its territory, scaring away all the prey. The next morning, Toro and Eris climbed the mountain to hunt the beast. Toro set up a spider web of ropes between trees to block the griffin's flight paths, while Eris set up magic barriers and traps. From a high branch, Toro fired multiple light arrows at the griffin's nest. 2 griffins attacked, but one was caught in Eris's lightning trap and finished off by Toro's powerful arrows. As the monsters fell, the voice of the world spoke again, granting Toro the levitation skill for defeating the noble guardian of the sky. Back at the village, Toro used the griffin meat to cook a massive feast, making fried griffin nuggets and meat bowl. The celebration lasted into the night. The merchant leader was thrilled, signing an exclusive deal with the village to sell their new mayonnaise and crops. Before leaving, Toro gave the village chief a large bag of gold as an investment to help them buy more livestock and tools. Eris, curious about where an 11-year-old got so much money, finally asked who he really was. Toro revealed a small secret. He owned a successful curry shop in another city. With the village's future secured, the team prepared to head home. The team left the mountain village at noon. The villagers were teary-eyed and grateful, which even made Rumha a bit emotional. During the journey back, Toro spent his nights testing his new levitation skill. To his disappointment, he could only float about 50 centimeters off the ground. He realized the skill didn't let him fly high, but acted like a spherical field that reduced his weight. He could walk on water or climb trees with zero effort because he felt weightless, and it even negated fall damage. One night, Toro got so excited testing the skill that he accidentally wandered outside the boundary of Eris's protective barrier. The alarm woke the whole camp, causing a panic. Eris scolded him for his recklessness, but her anger turned to shock when she learned he had acquired a legendary skill usually reserved for heroes or sages. She warned him that as he mastered it, it could eventually evolve into true flight. 3 weeks after they first left, the group finally returned to Dance's village. They were greeted warmly by fellow adventurers who thought they might have moved away. While Eris handled the long mission report at the guild, Toro headed to the merchant guild to register his new inventions: the magic lantern, waterproof cloth, tents, rain gear, and his food recipes like mayonnaise and popcorn. The local branch manager was stunned, calling Toro's ideas genius. Toro knew these items, especially the combination of fried food and mayonnaise, would be a massive hit at the local inn. That evening, Marches visited their home, eager to discuss business. Despite being exhausted, Toro ended up talking shop until late into the night. The next morning, Toro slept in while Eris, Shin, and Rumaya headed to the guild alone. Near the entrance, they spotted a flashy noble and 3 soldiers. Eris turned pale and hid. She recognized the man as Workin, a second son of a fallen viscount and her mother's lover. He was the man her mother tried to force her to marry. Workin spotted them and ordered his soldiers to seize Eris. Shin and Rumaya stood their ground, shielding her. Just as a fight was about to break out, the branch manager, Chloe, stepped in. She bravely stood up to Workin's noble status, reminding him that nobles cannot interfere with guild business. Her interference allowed the trio to slip away. Back at the house, Toro listened to the situation. He realized Workin was a serious threat who was illegally using the Valdane family name. Toro decided they couldn't stay in the village. They needed to go to the royal capital to settle this. He told Shin and Rumaya to stay behind to keep the team's income steady and stay out of noble trouble, while he and Eris handled the legal battle. Before they could leave, Workin arrived at their house, demanding Eris. Toro stepped outside and used his majesty skill, combined with a sharp verbal attack pointing out that Workin was committing a capital crime by impersonating a high-ranking noble. The pressure was so intense that Workin literally wet himself in fear and was carried away by his soldiers. Taking advantage of the distraction, Toro and Eris boarded a carriage and set off for the capital. 5 days into their trip, Workin caught up to them at a town gate. He tried to claim Eris was his fiancée and ordered her capture. Toro used magic to confuse one of the soldiers, causing the man to accidentally punch his own comrade. The resulting chaos led the local town guards to arrest Workin for disturbing the peace and impersonating a Valdane noble. Finally reaching the royal capital, Toro used his connection with the Garfish Trading Company. The head of the company, Mardai, greeted Toro like a VIP, much to Eris's shock. Mardai explained that he was setting up meetings with powerful nobles to help Eris's case. He also revealed that Sharga, the scholar Toro helped in the past, had introduced them to Count Kanon, the commander of the royal guard. Eris explained to Toro that her father hadn't been declared dead yet. He had simply vanished in a dungeon. Her mother and Workin wanted to marry Eris off to control the Valdane estate as puppets. The next day, Toro and Eris went to the royal guard headquarters. The guards initially blocked them, but Toro fired 3 arrows into the sky that landed perfectly in a cluster inside the high-walled training ground. This calling card got the attention of Count Kanon. The Count, a powerful lion beastman, apologized to Eris. Her father had vanished while under the protection of his knights. He revealed a top-secret detail. Her father disappeared in a mysterious room that suddenly appeared on the first floor of the Babylon dungeon. Touched by their story and feeling a debt of honor, the Count promised to provide knights to protect Eris while she stayed in the capital. He warned Toro that the world of nobles is full of snakes and told him to stay sharp to keep Eris safe. After meeting several influential nobles, Toro and Eris realized that support comes at a price. While many were hesitant to offend the powerful Martianist Valdane, others saw Eris as a golden opportunity to gain control over the neutral Valdane territory. Many nobles offered their backing only on the condition that Eris marry their sons to secure a political alliance. However, the presence of the royal guards provided by Count Kanon gave the children enough leverage to keep negotiations moving. Toro strategically leaked rumors to counter the Martianists' lie. While the Martianists claimed Eris was happily living at home with a fiancé, the truth about her seeking a legal guardian and the Marchioness's scandalous affair began to spread through high society. This forced the Marchioness to return to the capital in a panic. A scout from a C-rank adventure team warned Toro that suspicious figures, not typical adventurers, but likely underworld criminals, were now entering the Valdane mansion. Toro realized the Marchioness couldn't kill Eris without losing her claim to the estate, so she was likely planning to kidnap her. While searching for a reliable guardian, Toro was surprised by a visit from Sebas, the aide to Prince Flu. To avoid the public scene caused by a royal carriage, the prince had sent a standard noble carriage to bring Toro and Eris to the palace. During the ride, Eris was shocked to learn that Toro was actually friends with the fifth prince. Toro admitted he had been the prince's reversi instructor and had even let Eris win their past games to be polite, which earned him a playful scolding from her. At the palace, they met Prince Flu, who had grown from a chubby boy into a slender, dignified young man. Though he acted regal at first, he quickly dropped the act, jokingly complaining that Toro should have come to him for help the moment he arrived in the capital. The prince promised to inform the king and queen about the Marchioness's plot to end the Valdane bloodline. As a token of friendship, the prince gifted Toro a short sword engraved with the royal crest. The sword, crafted by the master blacksmith Angus, was named Toro and carried powerful enchantment. This miraculous reunion triggered Toro's hidden skill, granting him the luck ability. A few days later, while out on a routine herb-gathering quest to maintain their adventure rank, Toro and Eris were ambushed in the forest by 15 armed men. Using his enhanced vision, Toro sniped 5 attackers from the bushes. When the leader ordered the men to kill the guards and kidnap Eris, Toro shot him dead instantly. He then used his majesty skill to paralyze the remaining thugs with fear. The royal guards easily finished the job and the survivors fled in terror. Toro suspected the man behind the attack was Workin, the Marchioness's lover, but he couldn't confirm it in the chaos. The situation escalated when a professional assassin from the Assassin's Guild targeted Toro. While walking through a crowded street, Toro was hit in the neck with a needle coated in a lethal, fast-acting poison. His heart actually stopped for a moment, but his status resistance, dark spirit protection, and ultra-regeneration boosted by his new luck skill allowed him to survive the impossible and neutralize the toxin. He woke up in a clinic to find he had unlocked total poison resistance. Knowing the assassin would be watching, Toro decided to lure him out. He spent 3 days sitting at the top of the Sky Tree Tower, a high vantage point overlooking the capital. On the 3rd day, the assassin appeared, shocked to see Toro alive. The assassin fired more poison needles, but Toro simply brushed them off, mocking the secret guild poison that no longer worked on him. When the assassin tried to attack with a blade, Toro signaled the royal guards waiting below and then jumped off the edge of the tower. The assassin watched in horror as Toro used levitation to float safely to the ground. In a desperate attempt to copy the trick and escape the guards, the assassin jumped after him, falling to his death. Shortly after, a messenger arrived claiming that Baron Iancy, a member of a powerful noble faction, wanted an urgent meeting. It was another trap. As soon as Toro and Eris entered the room at the Baron's estate, the door was locked, and men tried to subdue them with paralysis needles. Because of his resistances, the needles had no effect on Toro. He drew his royal short sword, quickly taking down the kidnappers and rescuing Eris before the guards broke down the door. Toro realized the Marchioness was becoming desperate, launching multiple assassination and kidnapping attempts at once. He knew they had to end this political battle soon before her traps became even more dangerous. Following the failed kidnapping attempt, the truth quickly surfaced. Among the men captured was a servant from the Valdane estate who had been hired for his specialized skills. He confessed that they had used Count Iancy's name as a cover to lure Eris into a trap. The plan involved a carriage waiting behind the mansion to spirit her away, but Toro's unexpected presence ruined everything. The kidnappers had pivoted at the last second, using a paralysis needle on Toro while attempting to take Eris by force. But Toro's resistances and skills shut them down completely. It was revealed that the assassin involved was hired through the stepmother's underworld connections, specifically an illegal assassination guild. This proof of her ties to the criminal underworld was the final nail in her coffin. Count Kanan, commander of the royal guards, sent a letter confirming these details. While the stepmother could claim she was only trying to bring her daughter home, hiring professional killers made her actions indefensible. With her reputation in tatters, the atmosphere was finally right for Eris to receive a formal guardian. However, the guardian needed to be someone powerful enough to silence the stepmother's remaining influence. Just as Toro was weighing their options, Prince Flu called for an urgent meeting. At the palace, Flu greeted them with genuine concern, relieved that Toro had survived 2 assassination attempts. Then he delivered incredible news. After hearing about the situation, his mother, the king's favorite consort and the highest-ranking woman in the kingdom, had offered to become Eris's official guardian. With the royal family backing her, no noble would dare challenge Eris's legitimacy again. Eris was overwhelmed with gratitude, and Flu was proud to help his friends. The news of the royal guardianship spread through the capital like wildfire, effectively neutralizing the stepmother. This victory came just in time, as Toro had nearly spent his entire fortune bribing nobles for meetings. Just as he was worrying about his empty pockets, the Garfish Merchant Company reached out. They wanted to mass-produce Toro's inventions, the magic lantern and the waterproof cloth made from slime liquid. Toro met with Marde, the head of the company, to finalize the deal. While the lanterns would be sold cheaply to ensure high volume, the waterproof cloth presented a technical challenge. Marde's team couldn't get the slime liquid to stick to the fabric. Toro explained that the process required a special magic workbench he had designed, which used a magic circle to bond the liquid to the cloth. Marde was so impressed that he had already bought a massive plot of land and gathered thousands of slimes in anticipation of the production line. While Toro handled business, a scout brought urgent news. The stepmother had secretly given birth. Her lover, Workin, was bragging that the baby was their ticket to the marquee title. Toro realized their plan. They intended to kill Eris and claim the newborn was her legitimately born heir to steal the family line. With the official royal announcement of Eris's guardianship only 2 days away, the stepmother was desperate. Anticipating a final violent strike, Toro moved Eris from their inn to a secure house on the merchant company's property. This open area made it impossible for assassins to sneak up unnoticed. Several off-duty royal guards joined them to provide extra muscle. Eris set up layers of magical barriers around the house, and it wasn't long before her sensors picked up a large group of enemies approaching through the darkness. 35 mercenaries and assassins, led by Workin himself, surrounded the house. Toro didn't wait for them to reach the door. Using his god archer skills, he fired arrows into the dark. His shots were so powerful that a single arrow pierced through 3 men at once. When the enemies tried to hide behind shields, Toro used light magic to enchant his arrows, making them glow and punch straight through the metal. The attackers panicked as Eris's hidden magical traps, lightning and fire, erupted under their feet. The royal guards charged out to finish the survivors. In the chaos, Toro took down Workin with a final shot. By the time the main force of the royal guard arrived under Count Kanan's command, the battle was over. The next morning, the authorities found Workin's body, but they lacked the physical evidence to arrest the stepmother directly. Toro and Eris decided to take matters into their own hands. They headed to the Vandine mansion, using Eris's status to walk past the guard. While Eris confronted her stepmother in the drawing room, Toro used his stealth and true eye to slip into the study. Inside, he found the head maid May, who had remained loyal to Eris and was secretly looking for evidence. Toro used his creation magic to forge a copy of the safe's key and opened it. Inside, he found the ultimate proof, the signed contracts between the stepmother and the assassination guild. Toro returned to the drawing room just as the stepmother was shamelessly lying, claiming she had nothing to do with the attacks. When Toro produced the contracts, her face turned pale. The royal guards immediately stepped forward and dragged her away in chains. With the threat finally gone, Eris stood in her childhood home, finally safe. She and May shared an emotional embrace, crying with relief. The long battle for the Vandine legacy was over, and Eris had finally won her life back. The rumors regarding the Vandine family feud finally died down after the royal family officially announced they were becoming Eris's guardians. The king's favorite consort took her under her protection, making Eris's position untouchable. As for the stepmother, she was imprisoned in a tower to testify about her crimes, but she was soon found dead from poisoning. It was likely a hit ordered by the underworld to keep her from talking about the assassination guild. Her newborn baby was sent away to be raised by her biological family, the Earls. With the danger gone, Eris was free to return to her estate. The greedy nobles who had tried to force her into marriage now acted like nothing had happened, knowing they couldn't challenge the royal family's guardianship. Toro felt a deep sense of relief that his friend's life was back on track. Toro wanted to do one last thing for Eris: visit the dungeon where her father had vanished to offer flowers. To get permission to enter the restricted area, he contacted Sharga, the head of dungeon research. As a thank you for Sharga's previous help, Toro prepared a special high-end reversi board he had crafted. These boards were now famous and incredibly expensive, often sold at auctions under his master's pseudonym, but Toro used his status as a disciple to gift one. While Eris was busy with royal meetings, Toro met with Marde at the Garfish Merchant Company. Marde reported that the waterproof cloth products, tents, and rain gear were a massive hit. The royal guards and the kingdom's knights had already placed an order for 1,000 units because they were lighter and cheaper than monster hide gear. Marde was already building more factories to keep up. Additionally, the magic lanterns were set to launch the following week, using a live demonstration strategy to attract crowds. The next day, Toro visited Sharga at the Research Institute. Sharga was thrilled with the gifted reversi board and immediately agreed to let Toro and Eris enter the dungeon. He promised to provide elite guards for the trip, though they would have to wait a week until a team was available. When Toro returned to the inn, Eris was waiting. She had officially moved back into the Van Dyne mansion and was annoyed Toro hadn't joined her yet. She explained that the old, corrupt butler had been arrested, and she was bringing back the loyal former butler, Sheeps. Toro eventually gave in and agreed to move into the mansion. Living at the Van Dyne estate was overwhelming for Toro because of its sheer size. Late that night, Eris visited his room. She confessed that she didn't want him to leave for his home village yet. She asked him to stay in the capital and continue being an adventurer so they could stay together. Toro didn't give a final answer but promised they would always be a team. To make her feel more at home, Toro used his magic to install modern-style toilets and heated baths in the mansion, similar to the ones they had used during their travel. Toro also met with Marde to discuss opening a second branch of his curry shop in the capital. Since he had spent most of his money on noble bribes, Toro had to take out a loan from Marde to fund the shop. He personally handled the renovations and kept the menu the same as the original shop, planning to expand further in the future. A week later, the loyal butler Sheeps returned. He was a beastman of the sheep race, highly capable but very focused on the family's lands, so he soon left for the Van Dyne territory. He appointed May, the head maid, as the acting butler in his absence. Finally, the day of the dungeon trip arrived. Sharga sent 10 elite knights, led by Captain Suyok and Vice Captain Teiche. They headed to the Babylon dungeon, a massive structure surrounded by multiple layers of high walls to prevent monster outbreaks. After a quick meal, they entered the first floor. Teichai warned them that the floor was filled with skeletons and ghosts. Toro's wholly attributed short sword, made by his blacksmith friend Angus, was the perfect weapon for this. As they moved through the maze-like dungeon, the knights easily handled the skeleton. However, a ghost appeared and cursed one of the guards. To everyone's shock, Toro used high-level purification magic to lift the curse instantly and then took down a ghost himself. They reached the room where Eris's father had disappeared. While the knights saw nothing but an empty room, Toro and Eris spotted a dimensional rift, a glitch in the dungeon. Toro stepped toward it and suddenly he and Eris vanished from the knight's sight. They found themselves in a void-like space with no walls or ceiling. In the distance, they saw a man sitting alone. As they approached, Eris realized it was her father, the Marquis. To him, only 3 days had passed, but in the real world it had been 3 years. Toro grabbed them both and jumped back through the rift just as it began to close. Back in the dungeon room, the knights had been searching for hours and were about to give up when Toro, Eris, and the Marquis suddenly reappeared. The knights were stunned to see the Marquis alive after 3 years. Because they had survived the dungeon's distortion, Toro heard the voice of the world and gained a new spatial teleportation skill. The rift vanished forever, and the group shared an emotional reunion. The news of the Marquis' return spread instantly, causing a massive stir in the capital. While the Marquis was busy with royal meetings and recovery, Toro focused on the launch of the magic lantern. The live demonstrations were so successful that they caused a near riot of customers, forcing the guards to shut down the street performance. Despite this, the lanterns became an overnight sensation, making the Garfish Merchant Company famous. Amidst the lantern craze, Toro's new curry shop opened quietly. To get things moving, Toro used his old trick of hiring shills to line up and eat, making the shop look busy. Passing crowds, curious about the people eating behind the glass windows, began to trickle in, starting the shop's journey toward success. The curry shop's opening in the capital was a hit. The spicy aroma drew people in, and seeing the shills through the glass windows made passersby feel confident enough to enter. While the curry was popular, the desserts, especially the pudding, became an overnight sensation among the women of the capital. Toro felt relieved that the business was off to a great start. Meanwhile, the waterproof cloth was selling massively to the military, making the Garfish Merchant Company even more influential. Feeling he had repaid his debts, Toro finally had time to test his new spatial teleportation skill. To his disappointment, the skill was far from a cheat. It only allowed him to move about 1 meter at a time and drained a massive amount of mana. He threw a tantrum in the forest, realizing it was mostly useless for travel. However, he discovered he could use it to slip through physical restraints like ropes. While frustrated, he accepted it as a niche tool and returned to the Van Dyne mansion. At the mansion, Eris informed him that her father, the Marquis, wanted to speak with him. The Marquis surprised Toro by offering to have a fellow count adopt him. This would make Toro a noble, a path he had never considered. Toro hesitated, citing his humble commoner roots, but the Marquis insisted he think about it, noting that Toro was already famous among nobles for beating the Prime Minister at Reversi. For now, the Marquis asked Toro to continue looking after Eris as an adventurer until she was ready to fully return to her noble duty. The next day, Toro and Eris took a simple herb-gathering quest to keep their licenses active. Eris confessed that she wanted to keep being an adventurer because she loved the team they had built. She also revealed that her father and the head maid, May, were getting along very well, and She wanted to give them space. Toro agreed to keep the team Black Gold Wings going for now. They celebrated with curry and pudding, though Toro had to warn Eris not to overeat the sweets. When they finally returned to their home base in Dances Village after months away, they were shocked to see two women wearing the Black Gold Wings logo. These women, a healer named Yu and a thief named Ren, claimed they were the official members and that the team's leaders were actually Shin and Lumia. They even mocked Eris and Toro, calling them fans. Eris was furious, especially when she realized the women were living in their house. They found Shin and Lumia, who immediately bowed an apology. It turned out the two men had started dating these women while Toro was away, and being pushovers, had let them use the team name and stay in the house. Lumia quickly clarified that Toro was the true leader and told the women to pack their bags. After a long, awkward night of arguments, the two women moved out into Shin and Lumia's place. The next morning, Toro and Eris went to the guild and ran into their rivals, the Black Sword Party, who had teamed up with Ren and Yu. The rivals tried to shame Toro for kicking the women out, but Toro and Eris shut them down with logic, pointing out the women were only temporary guests who had stolen their logo. The rest of the guild welcomed Toro back, laughing off the rumors that had spread during his long absence. Toro and Eris went on a goblin hunt to test Toro's new short sword and god archer stats. They worked perfectly together, taking down 23 goblins with ease. While cleaning up, they rescued a tall, beautiful warrior being surrounded by monsters. She was Ragni, a member of the rare Dragonute race. She had horns and scales, and was searching for medicinal herbs to save her village from a deadly plague. Ragni was suspicious of men, constantly shouting, "Just kill me," whenever she thought Toro wanted a reward for his help. Toro ignored her outbursts and used his true eye and plant knowledge to create a specialized potion for the Dragonute plague. He gave her a large supply of rare herbs and taught her the recipe. Ragni was deeply grateful, though her "just kill me" catchphrase slipped out one last time as she prepared to head back to her village. Toro and Eris were amazed to learn that Ragni possessed the rare dimensional corridor ability, allowing her to travel between her village and the capital in an instant. After she successfully cured her village's plague using Toro's recipe, she returned to offer him legendary treasures as a reward. However, Toro turned them down. Instead, he asked her to join their team, Black Gold Wings, as their new frontline warrior. Ragni was confused because the Dragonute chief had ordered her to serve them, but Toro refused to accept her based on a command. He insisted she join only if it was her own free choice. After consulting her chief again, Ragni was granted total freedom and officially joined the team. To help her settle in, Toro arranged for her to move into the house previously occupied by Shin and Lumia, making her their neighbor. The team's dynamic shifted as they began training together. While Ragni was a powerful warrior, she was also incredibly humble and eager to learn the ways of adventurers. To get her started, they focused on simple G-rank quests, like gathering materials and repairing fences. Ragni found great joy in being thanked by the villagers, realizing that being an adventurer was about more than just fighting. A few days later, a specialized mission arrived from the guild branch manager, Chloe. A village 2 days to the south was reporting that a nearby swamp had become mysteriously toxic, affecting the surrounding environment. Because Toro possessed total poison resistance and purification magic, and Ragni had the natural resistances of a Dragonute, Chloe felt they were the perfect team for the job. As they prepared for the journey, Eris insisted they drop the formal titles and honorifics. She wanted them to speak casually as true friends to bridge the distance between them. Toro and Ragni agreed, finally addressing each other by their names. With their bond strengthening and a new mission ahead, the reformed Black Gold Wings set off toward the toxic swamp, ready to face their first real challenge as a trio. The trio headed toward the toxic swamp, spending the 2-day journey getting to know each other. They easily handled a small group of kobolds along the way, with Ragni clearing most of them with her spear and Toro sniping the runners with his bow. Ragni was impressed by Toro's archery, while Toro noted that Ragni was surprisingly skilled and studious despite her tough exterior. They discussed their combat roles, deciding that Ragni and Toro would both act as frontline fighters to share the burden of defense, while Eris provided magic support and healing from the back. When they stopped to camp, Toro surprised Ragni with his high-tech magic lantern and a high-quality tent. He even served pre-made tonkatsu from his storage, which Ragni loved so much she instantly became a fan of fried food. By the time they reached the target village, the three had become much closer. The village chief was initially worried to see 2 kids and a young woman, but Toro's professional attitude calmed him down. They headed into the forest, which was rotting from toxic fume. After giving his teammates poison resistance potions, Toro used levitation to walk over the mud, shocking Ragni, who realized Toro was far more capable than his glitched skill suggested. In the center of the swamp, Toro discovered a massive infestation of great poison frogs. He spotted a giant purple variant, a mutation acting as the boss. This creature was smart. It used other frogs as shields and attacked Toro with a powerful acid tongue. Toro took a hit to the leg but used his high-speed regeneration to heal instantly. He then dropped into the water to fire a light arrow from below, killing the boss. It took the team 3 full days to clear out all 300 frogs, a feat far beyond the original quest scope. The grateful villagers threw them a party, and the chief promised to pay extra for their hard work. Back at the guild, Chloe was stunned by their massive haul. She used her authority to promote Ragni to F rank immediately. Chloe then mentioned a potential new recruit named Ankh, a 26-year-old former mercenary who had reached E rank in just 1 month. Toro, Eris, and Ragni met him at a local eatery. Ankh was a rough-looking man with a giant sword and a scar, but he was surprisingly humble. He revealed he had a low-level appraisal skill and could see through some of their disguises. He explained that he was tired of war and wanted to try adventuring. Toro tested him with a herb-gathering and goblin-hunting quest. Ankh proved to be an expert fighter who knew how to conserve energy during battle, a veteran trick he shared with Ragni. Impressed by his skill and honesty, the team officially welcomed him. To protect their secrets, Toro gave Ankh and Ragni special pendants he had crafted that blocked appraisal skills. Since Ankh was joining the team, they reshuffled their living arrangements. Toro moved in with Ankh, while Eris moved in with Ragni to keep things appropriate. A few days later, a special monster cleanup event was announced following the defeat of a troll king. The team saw this as a perfect chance to boost Ragni's rank. They spent the day hunting, making sure Ragni landed the finishing blows on several orcs and an ogre. While resting, Toro sensed a group of soldiers in trouble nearby. It was a squad of regional guards being overwhelmed by orcs, harpies, and a troll. Toro's team jumped into action. Toro sniped the harpies from the air while Ankh and Ragni tore through the orcs. The troll turned out to be a troll leader, a rare, intelligent variant. It tried to use an orc as a shield against Toro's light arrow, but the team coordinated perfectly. Ankh cut off the beast's arm, Toro blinded it with arrows, Eris blasted it with lightning, and Ragni finished it off with a spear thrust to the heart. The rescued soldiers were incredibly grateful. Toro kept things professional, claiming the monster loot as their payment and avoiding any unnecessary drama. When they returned to the guild and presented the remains of the troll leader and dozens of orcs, Chloe was speechless. The black gold wings were proving to be far more powerful than anyone in the village realized. The guild leaders, Chloe and Shiri, were in a bind. The black gold wings had achieved results during the free quests that were unheard of for an E-rank team, taking down high-level monsters in massive numbers. Chloe decided to promote the newcomer, Ragni, directly from F to E rank. She also planned to move Toro and Eris up to D rank, but to her surprise, they both turned her down. Toro explained that they wanted to rank up together as a full team rather than leaving their friends behind. Chloe was touched by their bond but warned them to stop hunting monsters way above their level, as it was too dangerous. Toro promised to play it safe from now on. With the promotion settled, the team decided to take on their first official E-rank quest together. Toro then met with the merchant Marde to discuss a business idea for the mountain village that had helped them with the griffin. He suggested setting up food stalls to sell snacks like fries and popcorn, using the village's unique condiments like mayo and mustard. To make it work, Toro designed a lightweight, portable stall that could be easily stored in a magic bag. The idea was a massive hit. The stalls became an overnight sensation in the surrounding villages, with long lines of customers eager to try the new snacks. Back at their home base, Toro had been living with Ankh for 2 weeks. While the team often split by gender for private talks, Toro noticed that Ankh seemed to be watching him and Eris very closely. Toro confronted him, suspecting that Ankh wasn't just a random mercenary. Ankh admitted there were adult reasons for his behavior but didn't go into detail. Toro realized Ankh was likely a secret bodyguard hired by Eris's father, the Marquis, to protect her and report on her life. Since Ankh was reliable and clearly on their side, Toro decided to trust him and keep the team together. One morning at the guild, Eris found a specific E-rank quest that required someone with appraisal skills to help a man named Rurio move his family's belongings from the city of Dalida back to their village. The quest mentioned potential trouble with a local powerful figure. The team accepted and traveled to Dalida by carriage. Upon arriving at the family's shop, Toro's true eye and presence detection picked up something sinister. Inside the shop, he found a cursed stone, a rare magical item used to kill people from a distance. Eris quickly realized the stone was the reason Rurio's father had died, and his mother was currently falling ill. She set up a magical barrier to cut off the outside curse, while Toro used his purification magic to break the stone and heal Rurio's mother. The team realized this was a serious crime. Toro decided to stay behind to bait the culprit while the rest of the team escorted Rurio and his mother to safety. While hiding in the shop, Toro spotted a suspicious man scouting the building. He followed the man to the mansion of a local influential noble. Overhearing their conversation, Toro learned the noble had planted the cursed stone because Rurio's father had accidentally found a command magic stone that proved the noble was involved in a much bigger plot. Toro decided to strike back using a curse reflection technique. When the enemy's sorcerer tried to refresh the curse on the shop, Toro used his dark magic to send the energy back with double the power. The massive wave of dark energy rushed toward the noble's mansion, and Toro even gained a new magic power manipulation skill from the experience. When Eris and the others returned, they found the mansion in chaos, with the villains screaming in agony from their own reflected curse. The team checked the command magic stone and discovered a horrifying secret: a plot to assassinate Count Dalida, the ruler of the region. The plan was orchestrated by a mysterious figure in the capital known only as that person. Ankh quickly alerted the local guards, who the next day, Rurio visited Toro to report that the Earl's messengers had promised to support his mother's livelihood. He also warned Toro that the messengers had been asking suspicious questions, seemingly trying to find a link between the black gold wings and the noble who plotted the assassination. Toro realized that by explaining the situation too perfectly, he had actually made himself look more like a suspicious expert, possibly even a suspect in the eyes of the law. Ankh felt responsible, thinking his own blunt comments to the messengers had caused the doubt. He offered to clear Toro's name by revealing his own connections. He headed to the inn where the messengers were staying and showed them a royal crest and a ring from the Marquis Vande. Seeing proof of such high-level backing, the investigators finally backed off. Ankh returned and told Toro the heat was off, but warned him that the Earl of Dalida was now very curious about him. Toro decided that since his reputation was already spreading, he might as well use his biggest trump card to ensure they were never bothered again. He headed to the inn to meet the two messengers himself. Inside the pub, the messengers were drinking and gossiping. They were terrified because they had just found out that a high-ranking noble Lady Eris and a secret agent of the Marquis Ankh were backing this random kid. Toro walked up and asked if they still had doubts. The men tried to act tough, claiming they were just doing their jobs. Toro pulled out his short sword, removed the cloth covering the hilt, and showed them the royal crest engraved on it, the one given to him by Prince Flu. The messengers stared at it until their eyes nearly popped out. Realizing they had been interrogating a personal friend of the royal family, they fell off their chairs and performed a full kowtow on the floor, begging for mercy. Toro, embarrassed by how effective the crest was, hurriedly tried to get them to stand up. The next morning, the investigators apologized profusely and left for Dalida. With the trouble settled, Toro gave the team a day off. Ragni decided to visit her village using her dimensional corridor, and Eris wanted to go along. However, Ragni revealed that her portal was currently so narrow that only she could barely squeeze through. She admitted she had been eating too much of Toro's fried tonkatsu lately and had gained weight. When she tried to jump into the portal, she actually bumped into the edges. Depressed, she muttered her catchphrase, "Just kill me," while Eris scolded her for eating 2 portions of tonkatsu every single day. After Ragni left, Toro and Eris went for a walk in the forest. Eris sensed Toro was up to something, and he confessed he had gained a new skill, Magic Power Manipulation Max. He explained that this skill made his mana usage incredibly efficient, meaning he wasted almost no energy when cast. Toro began experimenting. He used a basic water spell, but instead of a simple splash, he used his new skill to compress the water into a high-pressure jet. He aimed it at a tree and the water sliced through the wood like a laser cutter. Next, he tried fire magic. He turned a tiny flame into a purple-blue torch hot enough to melt steel. He even turned a basic stone pebble spell into a high-velocity stone needle that functioned like a bullet. Eris was stunned. Toro was turning beginner spells into weapons more powerful than high-level magic. Toro then tested his spatial teleportation. Thanks to his improved mana control, the cost of teleporting had dropped significantly. He could now use it multiple times in a row without collapsing. Finally, they discussed Creation Magic Week. Toro had nearly died making weapons before because he tried to do everything in one go. Eris suggested a simple fix: break the process into steps. Create the base weapon rest, add the enchantment rest, and then add the magic stone. They spent the afternoon testing this theory. Toro successfully created a custom magic spear for Ragni using ogre magic stones and a great magic sword for Ankh using griffin material. By breaking the process into stages, he avoided mana exhaustion. Later, the team met at the rest stop inn. Toro presented the new gear. Ragni's spear increased her durability and had a self-repair function, while Ankh's greatsword boosted his speed and featured wind attribute sharpness. Both weapons were equipped with appraisal blockers and were owner-locked, meaning only Ragni and Ankh could use them. The two were overwhelmed by the gift. Ragni was so moved that she asked the team to perform a blood pact, a sacred dragonute ritual where they exchange a drop of blood to become true siblings. They all agreed, officially cementing their bond. During the conversation, Ragni shared a secret. The spatial teleportation skill Toro had was actually meant for traveling between dungeons. In ancient legends, those with this skill could move instantly between any dungeon they had previously visited. While Toro wasn't interested in dungeon diving, he had another idea. He asked Ragni if her village allowed visitors. They went to the forest, and Toro tested if he could teleport people with him. He grabbed Eris and Ankh and successfully blinked a few meters. Then he had Ragni open her dimensional corridor to her village. As she stepped through, Toro grabbed Eris and Ankh and used spatial teleportation to hitch a ride through her portal. In an instant, they appeared inside a house in the Dragonute village. Ragna's brother, Drago, was standing there and nearly fainted when three humans suddenly materialized in his sister's bedroom. Drago was a handsome Dragonute who looked just like Ragni. After the initial shock and a few "just kill me" mutterings from the confused brother, Toro introduced himself. When Drago realized this child was the savior who had sent the medicine to cure their plague, he was stunned. However, the village's high-level security had already detected intruders. Within seconds, the house was surrounded by elite Dragonute guards. The pressure from their killing intent was so heavy that Ankh began to sweat. Drago and Ragni hurried outside to explain that these weren't enemies, but the village's guests and heroes. As they walked through the village toward the chief's house, Toro was amazed. It wasn't a primitive village, but a massive vertical city built into a mountain, featuring pulley systems and high-altitude architecture. The guards were all incredibly powerful. Each one felt as strong as an elite adventurer. They finally reached a large mansion built into the cliffside. Waiting for them was the Dragonute chief, Ryuga, a massive and intimidating man, along with his wife. Ryuga looked Toro in the eye and thanked him sincerely for saving his people. Toro humbly replied that Ragni was his friend and teammate, so no thanks were needed. Impressed by the boy's character, the chief welcomed the black gold wings into his home. Inside the village chief's mansion, Toro and his friends were amazed by a collection of rare magic items, swords, and armor. Ryuga, the chief of the Dragonutes, and his wife Oreo bowed deeply to Toro, thanking him for the medicine that saved countless lives, including Oreo. Toro tried to give the credit to Ragyun for traveling so far to find help, but Ragyun insisted that Toro was the true savior for stepping up when they met. Toro explained that their sudden visit was an experiment to see if his space leap could be used with Ragyun's dimensional corridor. Ryuga was impressed, noting that such a combination was a brilliant idea even the Dragonutes hadn't considered. He explained that space leap is legendary because it allows instant travel between transfer rooms and dungeons, would make their lifelong goal of reaching the bottom floor much easier. He revealed that Dragonute elite teams often spend an entire year inside a dungeon, a level of dedication that shocked Toro. As evening fell, Ryuga invited them to stay, but Toro decided to head back, promising to return soon. On the way to Ragyun's house, the group learned that the Dragonute dungeon elite teams are essentially S-rank, legends with ultimate skills like Great Hero or Sky Dragon Knight. Ragyun mentioned that skills can actually evolve if a person pushes past their limits, a fact that stunned Eris. After saying goodbye to Ragyun's brother, Drago, the group used the portal to return home to Dancis. 2 days later, a messenger from Earl Dalder arrived at Toro's house. The Earl wanted to welcome Toro as an honored guest to thank him for saving his life during the recent assassination attempt. Toro politely refused, wanting to maintain a professional distance as an adventurer to avoid political trouble. He told the messenger that if the Earl had work for them, he should go through the Adventurers Guild. Later at the guild, the group found an emergency E-rank quest. A traveling merchant was worried about a remote village called Children's Village, a place with about 10 adults and 30 kids, because the bridge leading to it had collapsed and no one had heard from them in a week. The group met the merchant, who had used his own savings for the reward because he was genuinely worried about the children. Toro and his team reached the ravine where the bridge had fallen. Using his flight ability, Toro crossed the gap and secured a rope for the others. At the bottom of the cliff, he noticed human remains and scattered goods, suggesting a previous traveler had fallen. Leaving his friends to cross, Toro scouted ahead using presence erasure. He found the village, but it was eerily silent, with only one child's presence detected by his true eye. Inside the largest house, Toro found a young boy gasping for breath. The boy revealed a terrifying truth. The village was actually a training facility for an assassin guild. The instructor who had failed to kill the Earl had been captured, so the guild was abandoning the site. However, they had left a trap specifically for Toro as revenge for his constant interference. Beneath the boy was a massive array of cursed stone. Before Toro could escape, the boy triggered a forbidden suicide spell. A cloud of black death mist exploded, covering the entire village. Toro was caught in the center and died instantly. Eris, Ankh, and Ragyun arrived just as the black mist cleared. Ragyun recognized the spell as a forbidden area instant death curse that trades the caster's life to kill everything in range. They found Toro's lifeless body in the village center. Eris tried healing magic, and Ankh performed heart massage, but it was no use. Toro's heart had stopped. As they grieved, Ankh found the dying boy inside the house. The boy let out a high-pitched whistle, a signal to his comrades, and died. As the village began to burn, Ankh carried Toro's body away to escape any nearby enemies. Suddenly, he felt a heartbeat. Toro's automatic self-resurrection skill, which he had unlocked during a previous close call, had triggered. Combined with his luck and ultra-regeneration, Toro beat the nearly impossible odds and came back to life. After reuniting and resting, Toro explained that the Assassin Guild had used the sick boy to set a trap, believing Toro was dead. Since the village burned down and the boy signaled success, the guild would likely stop hunting him for now. Back in Dances, they reported the trap to branch manager Chloe. She revealed that Earl Dalder was launching a secret mission to wipe out the Assassin Guild's local hideout. Because Toro's team had experience with the guild's deadly curses, Chloe asked them to join the operation. Two B-rank teams, White Knight and Zetsui, agreed to support them, recognizing that Eris's barrier magic was the only thing that could stop the instant death mist. Toro told the teams he had a plan to handle the guild's final trump card, though he kept the details a secret for now as they prepared for the raid. The next day, Toro and his team, the Black Gold Wings, headed to a forest to meet two B-rank teams, White Knight and Zetsui, for a mission briefing. Suddenly, a man in ninja-like gear named Ikoku appeared out of nowhere. He was from the A-rank team Golden Mane, an elite group hired by Earl Dalder to lead the raid. Ikoku noticed Toro's stats were hidden by high-level magic but kept quiet. Inside a hidden tent, Reiga, the arrogant leader of Golden Mane, began explaining the plan to raid the Assassin Guild's base. Toro interrupted to warn them about the instant death mist trap he had barely survived before. Reiga was dismissive, trusting Ikoku's scouting report which hadn't found the trap. However, Ikoku admitted he hadn't checked the basement thoroughly. Despite the warning, Reiga wanted to stick to his original plan. Toro argued that they would all die if they ignored the curse. He proposed a side mission. His team would sneak in and disable the trap from the inside while the main force attacked. Reiga mocked Toro for being E-rank, but Ikoku convinced Reiga to let them try. Toro's team moved under the cover of night. He had everyone swap their main weapons for spares and stored their real gear in his magic storage for the infiltration. Near the guild's base, a ruined castle hidden in the forest, they were captured by assassins with stealth skills. Toro surrendered on purpose to get inside. They were taken to a basement cell where Toro came face to face with the guard. Sork, his deadbeat biological father. Sork, now a low-level thug for the assassins, started bragging about his life of crime and threatened to assault Eris and Ragu. As Sork opened the cell to attack, Toro used Space Leap to instantly break his ropes, disarm Sork, and knock him unconscious with his own club. The team geared up with their real weapons and headed upstairs. They overheard assassins panicking because the main raid had started. The assassins planned to use the instant death mist stones kept in the treasure room. Toro's team fought through the basement, with Ragun and Ankh clearing the halls while Eris provided magic support. Toro used Space Leap to blink inside the locked treasure room and stashed all the cursed stones and mana crystals into his storage. When a group of assassins arrived to trigger the trap, their sorcerer tried to use a small backup stone. Eris instantly trapped him in a magical barrier. The death mist exploded inside the small bubble, killing only the sorcerer. The team then moved to the second floor to find the guild master. They found him ordering his men to burn sensitive documents. Toro tried to stop them, but the assassins were fanatics. Two of them set themselves on fire to ensure the papers burned, even blocking Eris's water magic with their dying bodies. However, Toro noticed a man escaping with the most important files. It was Sork, who had escaped his cell. Toro chased Sork to the west wall. As a sorcerer unleashed a final death mist nearby, which Eris blocked with a barrier, Sork tried to use his escape skill to turn invisible. Toro used his true eye to predict Sork's movement and shot him. Sork dropped the secret documents and fled into the woods, wounded. The raid ended in victory. While many soldiers and B-rank adventurers were injured or killed by poison and traps, Toro's team suffered no losses and had secured the guild's secret records. Reiga tried to downplay Toro's contribution, but the leaders of White Knight and Zetsui stood up for him, proving that Toro's team had saved everyone from the death mist. Ikoku also confirmed that the documents Toro recovered were the Earl's top priority. Back in Dances, the team was officially promoted to D-rank. Although Chloe, the branch manager, wanted to keep it quiet to avoid jealousy, the news leaked. Legends of their success reached the village, including rumors that Ankh was actually a famous former mercenary known as the Red Ogre in Black. Now recognized as rising stars, the team celebrated Toro's 13th birthday by taking on a standard orc hunting quest, finally feeling like they had earned their place among the elite. Toro officially resigned from the Black Gold Wings and became a solo adventurer to protect his friends from the Assassin Guild. While the news shocked the village, Eris took over as the new leader of the team, and the B-rank teams White Knight and Zetsui publicly supported them to shut down any nasty rumors. Meanwhile, Toro said his goodbyes to his friends in Dances, including the merchant Marches and his friend Bob, and used Ragun's dimensional corridor to relocate to the hidden Dragonute village. Settling in at the home of Ragun's brother, Drago, Toro met with the Dragonute chief, Ryuga. To repay the village for their protection, Toro offered to help with their lifelong goal, conquering the local dungeon. He proposed using his space leap to ferry their elite teams between floors, which would save them months of travel. Ryuga was thrilled and, in exchange, ordered a specialized Dragonute unit to secretly hunt down the assassin guild members lurking near dances to ensure Toro's safety. Toro headed to the local Adventurers Guild branch to start working, but he hit a major snag. The Dragonutes are so self-sufficient that they almost never post quests. The branch receptionist, a woman named Ryuko who happened to be Ragun's childhood friend, explained that her job was basically a punishment game because there had been zero work for months. Toro panicked, realizing he couldn't maintain his D-rank status without completing quests. After a few days of worrying, Ryuko and Chief Ryuga came up with a solution. They posted a special free quest specifically for a teleportation user to assist the dungeon conquest team. Because it was framed as a non-combat transport job, it was safe enough for a D-rank adventurer like Toro to officially accept. Toro met with Ryuga to finalize the details. The plan was simple. Toro would stay inside the transfer rooms, safe zones located on each floor, and use his powers to move the warriors between the surface and the deeper level. Ryuga warned him never to step outside the safe zones on the lower floors, as the monsters there were incredibly dangerous. With the contract signed, Toro prepared to head to the dungeon the next morning for his first official trial run. Toro met with the guard captain at the village gate, where 5 Dragonute warriors were waiting to escort him to the dungeon. Although the captain was strict, the warriors relaxed once they were away from him. Their leader, a sturdy man with brown hair and golden eyes, explained that they were ordered to protect Toro at all costs, as he was now the key to the Dragonute's lifelong dream of conquering the dungeon. Toro estimated their strength to be around B rank, making them elite bodyguards. As they hiked, the air grew thin and cold, with snow appearing on the trees. The leader explained that the village's barrier had hidden the true high-altitude climate. They soon crossed into another barrier surrounding the dungeon entrance, which felt like walking into a climate-controlled room. Toro was amazed by the advanced magic, noting that human cities rarely had such high-level protection. Eventually, a massive castle gate appeared out of thin air, another illusion barrier designed to hide the entrance from outsiders. Inside the walls, the area looked like a small town with shops and rest areas. Toro saw children being trained to enter the upper floors, which were filled with slime. The leader explained that Dragonute children spend an entire day marching through the first 3 floors to build endurance. They entered the dungeon through a natural-looking rift in the rock. Unlike the stone brick dungeons Toro had seen before, the first floor here looked like a damp, glowing cave. While exploring, Toro decided to test his mana manipulation ultimate with his dark spirit magic. He wanted to see if he could precisely control a creature's mind. He targeted a harmless slime, and suddenly, a world voice echoed in his head. He had unlocked a special skill, Slime User. The leader laughed, explaining that this was considered a useless hobby skill for kids, as it usually only allowed a person to tame one weak slime of a specific type. Toro wasn't discouraged. He planned to pick a useful one later. They reached the transfer room on the first floor, which looked identical to the white stone rooms in other dungeons. To test his power, Toro used Space Leap and vanished. He instantly appeared in the transfer room on the second floor. After confirming it worked and noting that it barely used any mana inside the dungeon, he jumped back to the first floor, startling the guards. Next, they tested a group transport. The warriors formed a circle and held hands. Toro visualized a deep floor and leap. When they arrived, the room looked the same, but Toro felt a significant mana drain. They stepped outside to check the floor number. The leader turned pale when he saw the marking. Floor 201. They had bypassed decades of progress and landed in the unexplored abyss. The situation turned deadly when a glowing slime appeared. The leader recognized it as a slime emperor, a legendary monster that shouldn't exist on the upper floors. Even worse, it was a mutated subspecies. The warriors attacked, but the slime was immune to both magic and physical strikes. It moved with insane speed, blocking Toro's path to the safe room. As the slime lunged with a sharp, spear-like limb, Toro used Space Leap to blink around its attacks, eventually reaching the safety of the transfer room. Realizing the warriors would be wiped out if he didn't intervene, Toro decided to use his new Slime User skill. He jumped out of the safe zone, using Space Leap to dodge the slime's lethal strikes while repeatedly shouting "Tame." The slime eventually pierced Toro's forehead, but his luck skill kicked in. The wound was shallow and the taming succeeded at the last possible second. The slime pulled back its weapon and turned docile. Toro named it Pira. The warriors were stunned. The odds of taming a mutated Emperor-class monster were less than 1%, but Toro had pulled it off. Back in the village, Toro realized how much he missed his old team, but he knew he had to stay away to keep them safe. Meanwhile, in Dances, Eris was stepping up as the new leader of the Black Gold Wing. She realized she had become too dependent on Toro and wanted to do something to help him return. She proposed a bold plan to Ankh and Ragyun. They would go to the royal capital. Her father was a powerful neutral noble, and she planned to use his influence to pressure the corrupt Viscount who was funding the assassin. If they could remove the political threat, the Assassin Guild would lose its backing, and Toro could come home. Back at the Dragonute village, Toro registered Pira as his familiar. The receptionist, Ryuko, was shocked to see a slime user with a mutated slime emperor that could mimic clothing and hide its stats. She scolded Toro for jumping to floor 201, explaining that his escort team could have easily been killed. The next day, Toro reported his success to Chief Ryuga. The chief was ecstatic. With Toro's teleportation, their elite teams could now reach the 201st floor instantly, saving months of travel. Toro agreed to help transport the 45-man conquest team. Before the big mission, Toro decided to upgrade his gear. He used the village's unique transport system, a series of high-speed ziplines, to slide down to the lower district. Feeling the thrill of the wind, he headed toward the shopping district. He had 3 shops to visit: a massive general armory, a high-end custom shop, and a new forge run by a dwarf. He walked into the largest shop, Dragon's Breath, and was blown away by the incredible selection of legendary gear. Toro spent the day exploring the Dragon's Breath Armory, a massive 3-story shop. On the 3rd floor, he was dazzled by a collection of magic staves and rare mana stone. Using his true eye, he noticed that the prices were much fairer than in the royal capital. He spotted a legendary water dragon mana stone, locked in a special case with a price tag of 30 platinum coins, about 300 million yen. While the clerk assumed Toro couldn't afford it, Toro secretly realized he had more than enough saved from his magic item sales, but decided not to buy it yet to avoid overwhelming Eris with such an expensive gift. Instead, he bought several other high-grade stones to use for upgrade. On the 1st floor, he found a high-end priestess outfit made of hell spider silk. Recognizing it would fit Eris perfectly, he bought it, planning to modify it with his own magic. Despite the shop's massive inventory, he didn't find the right armor for himself, so he headed to Dragon Knight Weaponry, a custom shop nearby. At the custom shop, the staff welcomed him as a hero. Toro bought a lightweight round shield made from a rare dungeon metal and a large rectangular shield for Ragyun. He learned the clerk was actually Ragyun's relative, who mentioned that Ragyun had always wanted that specific shield. Toro also purchased a set of ghost armor for Ankh, which looked heavy but was enchanted with a weight reduction spell, making it light enough to lift with one hand. For himself, he picked up a pair of gauntlets and greaves made from a mysterious, indestructible material found in a dungeon treasure chest. Next, Toro sought out Langas' smithy, hidden in a back alley. He discovered that the owner, Langas, was the younger brother of Angus, the dwarf smith who had taught Toro back in Seishi. Langas was struggling to perfect his armor-making craft, feeling he had hit a wall. Toro gave him a hint by pointing out that Langas was focusing too much on his own style, rather than letting the natural properties of the monster materials shine. This realization inspired Langas so much that he kicked Toro out of the shop so he could immediately start working on a masterpiece. Left with time to kill, Toro ate at the Fire Eater Dragon Diner. He ordered a Fire Eater lizard steak, a dish that literally stays on fire while you eat it. Since he wasn't a Dragonute, he couldn't breathe fire to extinguish the flames and ended up burning his mouth badly, though his ultra regeneration healed the damage instantly. Back at his room, Toro used his creation magic and mana manipulation to upgrade the gear he bought. He reinforced Eris's new outfit with resistance to poison, paralysis, and instant death. He modified Ankh's armor to boost agility and wind power. For the shields, he added physical and magic reflections. Finally, he sat back, exhausted but satisfied, having turned the equipment into legendary tier gear. A few days later, Ragyun visited Toro via the dimensional corridor. She reported that the Black Gold Wings were doing well, but planned to move their base to the royal capital to investigate the Assassin Guild. Toro worried about their safety but didn't stop them. He introduced Ragyun to his new familiar, Pira the Slime Emperor, and gave her the upgraded shields and armor to deliver to the team. He sent a message to Eris. "I'm sorry, this is all I can do for now. Wear this as my substitute." Before the big dungeon expedition, Toro returned to Langas' shop. Langas, grateful for the advice, gifted Toro his masterpiece, a set of behemoth leather armor. It was worth a staggering 9 platinum coins. Toro, feeling it was too much to take for free, showed Langas his secret technique, using ancient magic circles to draw out a material's full potential. He gave Langas 3 of these magic circles as payment. During this exchange, Toro unlocked a new skill, anti-interference, which allowed him to see through enemy stealth and cloaking ability. To test his new gear, Toro went into the garden and tried to lift a massive boulder. Thanks to the strength-boosting enchantments on his armor and shield, he lifted the giant rock with ease. Ragun's brother, Drago, witnessed this and was horrified, realizing the E-rank Toro was walking around with gear so powerful it surpassed even the elite dungeon conquest team. Drago immediately ran to inform the village chief that they needed to treat Toro with even more respect than before. While Toro was away in the Dragonute village, Eris and the Black Gold Wings gained 3 temporary members. On the surface, they were G-rank beginners, but in reality they were elite Dragonute warriors, Malak, Zime, and Riva, who had traveled to Dancis using Toro and Ragun's combined teleportation powers. Though they missed the fried pork in Dancis, their true mission was serious, protecting Toro from the Assassin Guild. Using their high-level detection skills, they had already caught and eliminated several spies in the village. They decided to accompany the team to the royal capital to strike the guild at its roots. Eris was surprised to learn that despite their youthful looks, these warriors were between 68 and 80 years old, making them seasoned veterans compared to her. When Ragun tried to brag about being a promising warrior, her seniors quickly shut her down, calling her a fledgling, much to her embarrassment. Back at the Dragonute dungeon, Toro prepared for a massive operation. Chief Ryuga had assigned a high-level 45-man team to conquer the deep floors, and Toro was the key to moving them. Because Toro had saved the village and was crucial to their dream, the elite warriors, all equivalent to S-rank humans, bowed to him in respect. This act triggered a world notification. Toro unlocked Heroic Presence, a skill that boosted his charm, stats, and mental resistance. Toro felt awkward being treated like a savior and asked them to act normal. He even let the leader inspect his stats. The leader was shocked to find that Toro's garbled skill, which most people thought was useless, had actually granted him power that rivaled legends. The group entered the dungeon. To Toro's amazement, the elite warriors wiped out groups of slimes with top-tier magic in seconds. Toro used Space Leap to ferry the 45 warriors in groups from the first floor to the 201st floor instantly, bypassing decades of manual climbing. Once at the bottom, the warriors headed deeper into the unexplored abyss, while Toro stayed behind to manage the supply lines. 5 days later, Toro was still working the supply route. One day, the supply team lacked a member with magic storage, meaning they had to carry heavy loads by hand. Toro offered to help, revealing his magic storage ultimate had no limit. The Dragonutes were stunned, as even their best warriors couldn't store that much. At the 201st floor safe room, a problem arose. The supply team was short-staffed for the trek to the front lines. Toro volunteered to go with them as their porter. Despite some initial worry about his safety, they realized his personal guard was elite, and his storage was too useful to pass up. Toro's team descended to the 202nd floor. Thanks to his new anti-interference skill combined with True Eye, Toro could see through every hidden trap and monster. They stepped out of the cave and found a massive open-world environment with a blue sky and forest, a surface-type floor created by the dungeon. As they traveled, Toro's detection skills picked up a monster disguised as a rock. It was a rock needle porcupine that suddenly shot high-speed needles at them. Toro's slime, Pira, instantly reacted, forming a shield that deflected every projectile. Toro tried to counter with a magic-infused arrow, but the monster's defense was so high it escaped even after a direct hit. That night they set up camp. While the Dragonutes usually ate bland survival rations, Toro pulled out stoves and cooked a massive feast of katsu curry. The warriors, initially skeptical of eating rice, which they considered animal feed, were blown away by the taste. Some ate up to 7 bowls and the atmosphere became incredibly friendly. Toro also provided high-quality lanterns and tents, further proving his skills in magic item creation. The next day, they met a support unit led by a woman named Tia. She gave Toro and his guards a long lecture for being reckless by coming to the front lines, but she eventually joined them to ensure Toro's safety. They reached the main conquest team just as they finished a grueling battle with a powerful boss. The warriors warned Toro that a legendary monster, a Fenrir subspecies, had escaped them after a 5-hour fight and was likely lurking nearby. On the way back to the safe room, Toro's true eye spotted a massive silhouette 250 meters away in the forest. It was the wounded Fenrir. The monster, sensing them, charged out of the trees, surrounded by dark energy. Despite being injured, the beast had high resistance to magic and physical attacks. As the warriors formed a defensive circle around Toro, he prepared for a fight against his most dangerous opponent yet. Toro and his team faced the mutated Fenrir, which radiated a dark pressure that almost paralyzed Toro with fear. However, Tia, the female leader of the support squad, stepped forward fearlessly. She summoned a massive holy shield and used a high-level provocation skill to draw the beast's attention. The Fenrir, having two heads, cast two spells at once, a dark beam aimed at Tia and a high-level fire spell aimed at everyone else. Tia blocked the beam with her shield and created a magical barrier to protect the team from the flame. As the battle intensified, Toro snapped out of his fear. He pulled out his Artemis bow, but instead of using light arrows which he knew the beast would resist, he fired a physical arrow powered by his strength-boosting shield. The shot was incredibly fast and aimed straight between the Fenrir's eyes, but it bounced off the monster's hide with a dull thud. The support team's magic-infused weapons were also doing zero damage. Realizing the beast's defense was too high for normal iron, a teammate threw Toro a quiver of mithril arrows. Meanwhile, Tia struggled to hold the line. Despite being a master defender, the Fenrir's relentless physical and magical attacks were wearing her down. Toro noticed that the Dragonutes lacked Dark Element users, and since the Fenrir was already wounded from its previous 5-hour fight with the elites, he decided to try a risky move, Dark Spirit Magic. Toro warned his guards to protect him if the beast turned its focus his way. He used Ultimate Mana Manipulation to concentrate a paralysis spell specifically on the Fenrir's heart. As the monster tried to blast Toro with a dark beam, his slime Pyrrha leaped out and deflected the attack. Simultaneously, Toro's focus spell hit home. The Fenrir thrashed in agony for a moment before its heart stopped, and it collapsed dead. The team was stunned that Toro had finished off such a legendary monster. As Tia went to confirm the kill, she found a dropped item, a key. Suddenly, the ground shook and a hidden trapdoor with a keyhole appeared. This was the entrance to the next floor. Tia realized the Area Guardian itself was the key to moving deeper. Toro used a specialized knife to harvest the Fenrir's magic stone. The moment he touched it, the voice of the world echoed in his head. He had met the secret requirement of defeating an Area Guardian and unlocked a legendary skill, multicasting. This would allow him to cast multiple spells at once, a massive upgrade for his combat power. After ferrying the supply teams and warriors to the newly discovered safe room on floor 202, Toro returned to the surface. The next day, Chief Ryuga scolded him for putting himself in danger, but thanked him for accelerating the dungeon conquest by years. He even offered to put Toro through hell training at the Dragonute facility, but Toro politely declined, wanting to avoid that level of intensity. To stay productive, Toro decided to open a curry shop in the Dragonute village. He partnered with a local food developer named Cooks, teaching him the recipes for curry, tonkatsu, and steamed bun. The Dragonutes were so obsessed with the lethal deliciousness of katsu curry that they immediately planned to hunt local orcs to extinction for the meat. Toro also organized the local craftsmen to mass-produce his magic inventions, like lanterns, refrigerators, and heaters, to improve the village's lifestyle. Meanwhile, in the royal capital, Eris was working hard as the leader of the Black Gold Wings. She was staying at her father's mansion along with Ragni, Ankh, and 3 elite Dragonute warriors who were secretly guarding them. Eris met with her father, the Marquis, to discuss a plan to save Toro. She wanted to expose the corrupt Viscount Seishi, who had hired the assassins to kill Toro. The Marquis was hesitant to interfere in political feuds for a commoner, but Eris had a brilliant solution: have a neutral noble family adopt Toro. If Toro became a noble, the assassination attempt would be treated as a high-level political crime against a noble house, allowing the Marquis to officially crush the Viscount and the Assassin Guild. Ragni traveled through her portal to the Dragonute village to tell Toro the news. Toro was hesitant about losing his freedom as a noble, but he realized it was the only way to stop the assassins and protect his friends. He agreed to the plan. The next day, Toro traveled to the capital via Ragni's portal. He had an emotional reunion with Eris and Ankh at the Vandine mansion. There, he met Count Granute, a kind and wealthy noble who had been a fan of Toro's exploits for a long time. The Count was eager to adopt him, treating the paperwork more like a fan meeting than a legal transaction. Toro signed the adoption papers, officially becoming a member of the Granute family. With this new status, the Count and the Marquis prepared to launch a legal and political strike against Viscount Seishi. For the first time in months, Toro felt like he could finally see a path back to a normal life. The 4 friends spent the evening catching up, with Eris proudly showing off how much she had grown as a leader in his absence. While Toro's old team, the Black Gold Wings, were reuniting at the Van Dyne estate, the 3 Dragonute warriors who had temporarily joined them, Malak, Zume, and Riva, were exploring the royal capital. As they navigated the crowded streets, Malak complained about the sheer number of people, making it hard to use his appraisal skills. Riva, bored with the lack of assassin activity, revealed she had used her special marking ability on 2 interesting people she encountered. One of them possessed the rare teleportation skill, which allowed for short-range movement on the surface, unlike Toro's dungeon-only magic. Feeling hungry, the trio headed to Toro's curry shop, which had become a massive hit in the capital, drawing long lines of commoners and nobles alike. Thanks to a recommendation from Marquis Van Dyne, they were escorted to a private room. During lunch, Riva suddenly sensed that the two people she had marked were meeting. One had the teleportation skill, and the other had a rare escape skill, which specialized in running away. However, before they could investigate, the person with teleportation sensed her mark and broke it. Realizing they were dealing with someone skilled, the trio decided to finish their meal and track the remaining person with the escape skill afterward. Back at the Van Dyne estate, Toro spent a final evening catching up with Eris, Ragyun, and Ankh. The team was impressed to hear how much Toro had accomplished in the Dragonute village, while Toro was relieved to hear that the team's reputation was soaring in the capital. The next morning, Toro prepared to return to the Dragonute village. He thanked his friends and asked them to handle the legal battle against Viscount Seishi. Ragyun opened a dimension corridor, and Toro stepped through, returning to his duties at the dungeon. Back at the village, Toro balanced his time between transport quests, setting up the curry shop, and researching magic circles. One morning, he visited the Adventurers Guild and noticed an emergency request. The guild branch chief, Saraman, and his team had gone missing on the 86th floor while mapping it. The 86th floor was known as the labyrinth within a labyrinth and was prone to a rare phenomenon called the storm. This storm acted as a skill killer, neutralizing all sensory and combat skills and causing people to lose their mind. Toro joined a search party and headed to the 86th floor. During the trek, the storm hit, and the rope connecting Toro to his guards was cut by a monster. Separated and blinded by the mist, Toro began to lose his sense of direction. However, his slime companion, Pyrrha, was unaffected and guided him. Toro experimented with his magic and discovered that by using high-level mana manipulation with status recovery magic, he could temporarily negate the effects of the storm. This feat earned him a new skill, Skill Killing Weak. While searching for his team, Toro encountered a minotaur. Using his enchanted gear and his new heroic presence buff, he engaged the beast. He tried using his new skill-killing ability, but it seemed to have no effect on the Minotaur's raw strength. After a grueling hour-long battle, Toro finally took the beast down. He eventually reunited with his guards and used his magic to clear their sensory confusion. When he mentioned the Minotaur, his guard leader, Tsugumu, remarked that a warrior of his level usually finishes one in under 3 minutes. Toro, who took an hour, realized he still had a long way to go. The group eventually found Saraman's team, who had been trapped for 2 weeks and were near death. Toro healed them and used his teleportation magic to bring everyone back to safety. Saraman was incredibly grateful, especially after learning Toro was the one who had saved the village from the previous plague. The next day, Saraman officially resumed his duties as branch chief and posted several high-ranking quests to revitalize the guild. He jokingly offered Toro a B-rank quest to hunt minotaurs, promising a rank up to D+ if he succeeded. To the shock of Saraman and the receptionist, Toro accepted the quest on the spot and pulled the minotaur carcass he had defeated earlier out of his magic storage. Saraman was stunned. No Dragonute of Toro's age could solo a minotaur, proving that the young human possessed terrifying potential. The minotaur quest was officially marked as complete. After checking the tags to confirm the kill, the receptionist, Ryuko, handed Toro's adventure tag back, announcing his promotion to D+ rank. The branch chief, Saraman, jokingly offered to stamp more quests to push Toro towards C rank, but Toro declined. He admitted that without his slime companion, Pyrrha, and his high-level gear, he wouldn't have survived the Minotaur fight. He also wanted to reach the next rank alongside his teammates. Saraman agreed and processed the Minotaur carcass for purchase. He noted that while the body was too damaged to be worth much, the mana stone was valuable. After inspecting the remains with an appraisal skill, Saraman laughed and revealed that Toro had actually soloed a Minotaur variant, a rare version with healing powers. Toro used his true eye to confirm this, realizing he had overlooked the detail in his rush to harvest the stone. Saraman impressed Toro further by showing off a massive battle axe from his magic storage, claiming he used to be a top-tier raider known as Saraman the Guillotine. Toro felt a bit discouraged, realizing that everyone in the Dragonute village seemed to be at an impossibly high level. The next day, Toro noticed a new request on the guild board. Usually the village chief or the guild posted these, but this was a private request for transport. Ryuko explained that after seeing Toro teleport Saraman's team back safely, other support teams wanted to hire him to save time and energy. Toro accepted a request to take a team to the 100th floor, especially since the storm on the 86th floor made manual travel dangerous. In the back room, Toro met the client, a high-level warrior named Saline who turned out to be Saraman's daughter. Her team was well-balanced with a spearman, shield-bearer, mage, archer, and healer. Saline herself didn't carry visible weapons, suggesting she had her own magic storage. She was polite and athletic, unlike her loud father. She explained that while they weren't ready for the main raid team yet, they wanted to train in the middle floors without wasting days trekking through the upper levels. Toro agreed to the job. After meeting his guards at the gate, they headed into the dungeon. Toro used his space-time transfer to instantly move Salin's team to the 100th floor rest area. The team was stunned by the speed and thanked him, promising to meet him for a pickup in 10 days at the 110th floor. As they headed deeper, Toro's guard leader, Tsugumu, remarked on how Toro's magic was changing the era of dungeon exploration. A few days later, Ragyun arrived at Toro's house via a dimension corridor. She brought news that the legal paperwork for Toro's adoption by Count Granut was almost finished. Toro needed to return to the capital for a final interview with government official. Toro realized this conflicted with his scheduled pickup for Salin's team. When he told Saramin about the situation, the branch chief offered to go to the 110th floor himself to wait for his daughter and explain the delay. Toro thanked him and helped Saramin prepare for the stay before returning to the surface. The next morning, Toro traveled to the Van Dyne estate in the capital. Eris explained the plan. Once the adoption was official, they would immediately file charges against Viscount Seishi. Since Toro would be the ward of a powerful neutral noble, the kingdom would have to act. Toro also planned to visit Prince Flu immediately after to keep him in the loop, knowing the prince might be offended if he found out through rumors. The meeting with the officials went smoothly, and Toro officially became a noble's son. Marquis Van Dyne then led Toro, Count Granut, and Count Derder to the Royal Knights' headquarters to report Viscount Seishi's crimes. They presented the evidence found at the Assassination Guild branch. The knight commander, Count Onbini, was hesitant to act because his wife's family belonged to the same political faction as Seishi. However, Count Connerin, the leader of the Imperial Guards and a friend of Eris, accidentally walked in and pressured Onbini. Connerin threatened to have the Imperial Guards handle it if the knights were too slow, which would make the knights look incompetent. Panicked, Onbini immediately ordered his men to arrest Seishi. Toro later learned this entire confrontation was a scripted performance set up by Marquis Van Dyne to force the knight's hand. Viscount Seishi got word of the arrest warrant and fled to the estate of his faction leader, Marquis Haragula. The knights surrounded the mansion but couldn't force their way in without a fight. Meanwhile, Toro visited Prince Flu at the palace. The prince was shocked to hear about the assassination attempts, but happy that Toro was now a noble. He promised to support Toro and asked to hear more about his adventure. After leaving the palace, Toro learned that Seishi was still hiding at Haragula's estate. Suspecting a leak in the knights' ranks, Toro decided to investigate himself. Using his new multicasting skill, he combined light, dark, and water magic to create a perfect optical camouflage, making himself invisible. He snuck past the guards and into the mansion. Inside, he followed a high-ranking servant named Alexa to a private study. He eavesdropped on a conversation between Marquis Haragula and a desperate Viscount Seishi. Haragula was furious that Seishi had targeted a noble's son, as the evidence was now too strong to ignore. While Seishi begged for protection, Haragula coldly told him to surrender to the knights. Haragula promised that Alexa had made arrangements to ensure Seishi would be safe even if he went to prison. Relieved but foolish, Seishi left the room to greet other nobles downstairs. Once he was gone, Haragula's tone turned deadly. He told Alexa that Seishi had tried to threaten him and he ordered Alexa to finalize the last goodbye. Realizing that Alexa was a dangerous expert who could almost sense his presence, Toro quickly and quietly escaped the estate before he could be caught. After Toro reported Marquis Haragula's cold betrayal of Viscount Seishi, Marquis Van Dyne realized a full-scale civil war between noble factions could be avoided if Seishi was simply removed from the picture. The very next morning, news broke that Viscount Seishi had committed suicide in his cell with a hidden blade. Everyone knew it was likely an assassination to silence him, but his death meant the immediate threat to Toro's life from the assassins was finally over. While his friends celebrated the news, Toro remembered his commitment to Saline, the guild chief's daughter. He needed to pick her team up from the 110th floor. Eris, Ragyun, and Ankh insisted on coming along, eager to see the Dragonute dungeon for the first time. Using Ragyun's dimension corridor and Toro's teleportation, the team arrived at the Dragonute village and headed into the dungeon. When they reached the 110th floor rest area, it was empty. Toro found a note from the guild chief, Saramin, stating that his daughter's team hadn't returned on time, so he had gone down to find them. Toro's team leaped through the floors, finding more notes at each level. It became clear that Saline's team had been overconfident, pushing deeper into the 113th floor, and Saramin was desperately chasing after them. Between the 113th and 114th floors, they found Saramin protecting a heavily poisoned and unconscious Saline. They were being hunted by a dark great wolf, a terrifying variant normally found much deeper, around the 170th floor. This beast was an uplifter, a monster that had moved up to easier floors to hunt weaker prey. It used a lethal dark breath that inflicted paralysis and a deadly poison that even high-level Dragonutes couldn't resist. Toro and Eris immediately began treating Saline with high-level magic and potions. Meanwhile, the Dragonute guards and Toro's friends engaged the wolf. The beast was smart, staying at a distance and using fire magic to disrupt their movements before blasting them with its poisonous breath. Seeing the team struggling, Toro stepped into the front line. He used his skill-killing weak to temporarily negate the wolf's breath attack. The plan worked. Deprived of its main weapon, the wolf was momentarily confused. The guards and Saraman seized the opening, delivering massive wounds. Saraman finally ended the beast by crushing its skull with his great axe. Though they won, the victory was bitter. Saraman's daughter survived, but the rest of her team had already been killed by the wolf, which bore the title Dragonoot Slayer. Over the next 3 months, life settled into a new rhythm. The political fallout of Seishi's death left his lands in a tug-of-war between factions, but Toro was safe. He spent his time helping the Dragonoots with dungeon research, managing his successful curry business, and visiting his adoptive parents, the Count and Countess Granoot, who treated him with genuine love. Eris also began preparing for her future, realizing that as she approached adulthood, her responsibilities as a noble's daughter would eventually limit her time as an adventurer. Toro didn't stop investigating the assassination guild. The Dragonoot warriors, Malak, Zume, and Riva, had been tracking the guild's branches across the kingdom. They discovered that the guild used secret magical contracts that forced members to commit suicide if they tried to leak information. However, using their superior tracking skills, they identified 4 secret hideouts right inside the royal capital. Toro shared this intel with Count Derder, a powerful noble in the Prime Minister's faction. The Count was stunned that Toro's friends had found locations his own elite spies had missed for years. Toro advised against an immediate raid, suggesting they watch the locations to identify every member first. Amidst all this progress, the local guild chief delivered one more piece of good news. For their bravery and consistent success, the rest of Toro's team was officially promoted to D rank. The Black Gold Wings officially received their promotion to D rank at the Dragonoot Village Guild branch. While the branch chief, Saraman, praised them as being far above D rank in terms of equipment and skill, the receptionist Ryuko reminded him that young adventurers are often promoted slowly to avoid jealousy from others, and to prevent them from taking on suicidal missions. Eris, however, dropped a bombshell. In 3 months, she would reach adulthood and plan to retire from adventuring to fulfill her duties at the Van Dyne estate and support her father's new family. The team was stunned. Toro was deeply shaken, but Ankh and Ragun took the news with a bittersweet calm, admitting they knew this day would come. Ragun and Ankh promised to stay by Toro's side as long as he continued adventuring, but Toro struggled to process the idea of the team eventually splitting up. Despite the heavy atmosphere, they headed into the dungeon for their usual training. Later that night, Toro reflected on his own future as a noble's ward, realizing he too would eventually have to balance his freedom with responsibility. In the following weeks, the Dragonoot village saw a surge in new adventurers. Inspired by Saraman and the Black Gold Wings, many Dragonoots joined the guild, though they viewed the work more as a handyman's service since most quests were too easy for their natural strength. Eris and Ragun tried to act like experienced seniors to the new recruits, but they were quickly humbled. During an oak hunting quest, a group of Dragonoot rookies, who didn't know how to hold back, accidentally obliterated an entire herd with raw power, leaving Eris and Ragun realized that while they had higher ranks, the locals were fundamentally on a different level. Meanwhile, Toro continued his magic research, trying to combine the village's defensive barrier magic into portable magic circle. He noted that Eris had become increasingly busy with social duties in the capital, preparing for her debut into high society. At the same time, Ankh met with Count Granoot to conclude his secret contract. It was revealed that Ankh had been hired by the Count to protect and report on Toro until the adoption was finalized. Ankh admitted he found adventuring with Toro more fulfilling than his old mercenary life and promised to keep watching over him, not as a paid guard but as a friend. In the capital, Eris was gaining a reputation of her own. During a dinner at the palace hosted by the Queen, the mother of Prince Flu, Eris's blunt and honest personality charmed the royal family. The Queen was so impressed that she jokingly suggested Eris should marry Prince Flu. Both Eris and the prince were mortified by the sudden proposal, while Eris's father simply beamed with pride. Back at the Dragonoot village, Ragun felt a similar loneliness about the team's future. Her brother, Drago, teased her for being sentimental, but he shared that Toro had recently praised her as the most talented member of the team. This small bit of validation cheered her up, helping her face the upcoming changes with her usual optimism. As the 3-month deadline approached, the Black Gold Wings focused on building Toro's reputation as the leader. While Eris had been the face of the team in the capital, Toro needed to be recognized by the upper-tier adventurers. They began taking on support roles for B-rank teams in the capital's guild. During a deep cave raid, Toro's precision with a bow and his tactical leadership impressed the veterans. He made sure to let the higher-ranked teams take the final kills to save their pride, quickly making the Black Gold Wings one of the most requested support teams in the city. One day, a B-rank team called the Silver Goblins, led by a man named Hulk, specifically requested the black gold wings for a major mission. A massive army of 400 goblins, led by a goblin general and nearly 80 hobgoblins, was terrorizing the Danton territory. Hulk was arrogant and spent the carriage ride trying to scout Toro's team into his own organization, promising to train them. Eris and Ankh were annoyed by his condescension, especially since Hulk didn't realize the Black Gold Wings had already turned down offers from even higher-ranked team. When they arrived at the Danton territory, the situation was grim. Smoke rose from burning villages, and the local forces were retreating. Toro's superior sensory skills allowed him to detect a goblin ambush long before Hulk's scouts noticed anything. As the battle began, Hulk tried to coordinate a slow advance, but Toro's team moved with explosive speed. Using his magically enhanced gear, Toro fired a single, light-infused arrow that pierced through several hobgoblins and killed the goblin mage hiding in the rear. Ankh and Ragun tore through the front lines like a whirlwind, their speed boosted by Eris's magic. Ankh's massive sword sliced through hobgoblins and their shields as if they were paper. The silver goblins stood frozen in shock as the black gold wings wiped out the entire vanguard in minutes. Feeling his ego bruised, Hulk shouted that the Goblin General would be different and demanded that Toro's team stay back so the professionals could handle the real boss. Toro simply nodded, hiding a smile as he realized the elite B-rank team was struggling just to keep up with his team's warm-up. The army of Viscount Danton was stationed on the main road to the capital, but their morale was hitting rock bottom. After losing their village to the Goblin Horde, the soldiers were exhausted and ready to retreat. When Toro and the other adventurers arrived, the unit commander explained the situation. The enemy wasn't just 400 goblins as originally thought, another 400 had joined, bringing the total to 800. Hulk, the leader of the B-rank Silver Goblins, tried to act tough, but even he looked pale at the thought of facing those numbers. Toro assessed the field and realized they had only 100 tired soldiers and 40 adventurers. He planned to have the main force clear a path so Hulk's team could stay fresh for the final blow against the Goblin General. However, Hulk's ego got in the way. He insisted on leading the charge himself. Ankh whispered to Toro that Hulk was a great fighter but a terrible commander, but they had no choice but to follow his lead. The battle began with the Silver Goblins showing off their expertise. Their mage rained down earth magic, Hulk cleared the front lines with wide sword swings, and their thief used fire items to incinerate groups of goblins. Seeing the opening, Toro ordered his team to move in. While the Silver Goblins pushed through the center, the local soldiers and adventurers were too exhausted to keep up. Toro's team took over the rear support. Ankh used wind-infused slashes from his greatsword to take down flanking goblins, while Ragun used her magic spear to trigger rock spikes from the ground. Eris joined the front line, using her staff for melee combat, and then unleashed a massive lightning strike that wiped out a huge cluster of enemy. Toro decided to show off a new move he'd been practicing. He pulled back his Artemis bow without an arrow, forming a bolt of pure light. He fired it into the sky, where it burst into a rain of tiny light arrows that decimated the goblin ranks. This display of power stunned both the goblins and the human soldiers. The group finally reached the center where the Goblin General was waiting. Hulk and his team, though already out of breath from overexerting themselves early on, managed to engage and kill the general while Toro's team kept the surrounding hobgoblins at bay. Hulk held up the general's head, declaring victory, but the goblins didn't run away. Instead, they kept attacking with even more intensity. Toro sensed a massive presence further back. A goblin even larger than a hobgoblin stepped forward, a goblin king, a B-rank threat. Hulk, completely drained of mana and stamina, panicked, admitting his team couldn't fight something that strong in their current state. Toro stepped up, calling for his team to take the lead. He fired a light arrow that pierced through several hobgoblins and hit the king's shoulder. Enraged, the king roared, ordering the entire horde to focus on the black gold wings. Eris immediately cast a protective barrier to keep the horde back and used anti-magic shields to block incoming fire spells from goblin mages. She then buffed Ankh and Ragun's strength. The two warriors charged the king. Ankh used his speed to dive in from the left, slicing off the king's hand to prevent it from using its magic staff. Simultaneously, Ragun used her specialized shield to parry the king's massive sword and stabbed her spear into its side. As the king screamed in pain, its guard dropped. Toro seized the moment and fired a full-power light arrow through the king's chest, killing it instantly. With the king dead, the goblin army finally collapsed and fled. The humans spent the rest of the night hunting down the stragglers to ensure no other villages were attacked. The next day, Viscount Danton arrived. Despite the near disaster, he gave a cold, generic thank you speech and left for the capital without offering any extra rewards. The adventurers were annoyed by his stinginess, but they headed back to the capital to report their success. News of the victory spread fast. While the silver goblins got credit for the general, the other adventurers who were there told everyone the truth. The D-rank Black Gold Wings had actually killed the Goblin King. Because of their overwhelming performance and the recommendations from the other teams, Toro's team was officially promoted to D+ rank. Eris was thrilled, seeing a path to C rank before her retirement, though Ragyun and Toro warned the team not to get overconfident. With the dungeon transport quests on hold, the team took on a harpy hunting request near the capital. Harpies are usually avoided because they fly and use hypnotic songs, but Toro's team felt prepared. However, during the fight, Ragyun forgot to put her earplugs back in after a break and fell under a harpy's spell. She began hallucinating that Ankh was a rare black goblin and attacked him with her magic spear. As Toro tried to cast a recovery spell, more harpies distracted him. Ragyun, still confused, lunged at Eris. Pyrrha managed to deflect the spear at the last second, but the tip grazed Eris's thigh. Because the spear was infused with earth magic, it didn't just leave a clean cut, it jaggedly tore the flesh. Eris collapsed in pain. Toro quickly healed Ragyun's confusion and used high-level potions on Eris. Although the surface wound closed, the internal damage from the magic spear was severe. Realizing she needed better care, they used a dimension corridor to rush her to the Dragonute village. 2 months passed. Eris survived thanks to the Dragonute High Priestess, but the injury left her with a permanent limp. While she could walk fine, she could no longer run or fight at a high level. She officially retired from the Black Gold Wing. On her birthday, the team gathered at the Van Dyne estate to celebrate her transition into noble life. Ragyun was still drowning in guilt, but Eris hugged her, insisting it was an accident and that they would always be best friends. Life moved on. Toro moved into Count Granute's estate permanently, and the team continued their work. One day, while on a transport mission in the Dragonute dungeon, they received incredible news. The raid teams had reached the 265th floor. This was the final floor. Toro was summoned to the very bottom, where the dungeon core sat on a massive pedestal. The Dragonute heroes thanked Toro, admitting that without his teleportation magic, it would have taken them centuries to reach this point. They offered Toro the honor of destroying the core to claim the legendary drop item, but Toro declined. He insisted that this victory belonged to the Dragonutes. He set up a massive feast of curry and tonkatsu for the exhausted warriors and went back to the first floor to fetch the village chief, Ryuga. When Ryuga heard the news, he ran so fast he left his guards behind. He hugged Toro, declaring him a living legend of the Dragonute race. Toro just smiled and teleported the chief down to the final floor to witness the end of their centuries-long struggle. Toro and his team were feasting on curry at the bottom of the 265th floor when village chief Ryuga arrived. Ryuga was confused by the casual atmosphere, but the great sage explained that everyone had already finished their emotional celebrations before he got there. Ryuga pulled himself together and gave a heartfelt speech, thanking the warriors for fulfilling a centuries-old dream. He then pulled out a massive warhammer and approached the pedestal holding the dungeon core. Toro asked Ryuga what he would wish for upon breaking the core, but Ryuga admitted he didn't know yet. As the Dragonutes watched in silence, Ryuga smashed the blue core with a single blow, shattering it into pieces. Toro expected the dungeon to start shutting down, but nothing happened. Instead of the walls fading, the ground opened up and a treasure chest appeared. Toro urged Ryuga to open it, and inside, they found a second white dungeon core.